practice, Carl.
Okay, it's April 13th, 2016. This is a joint meeting of the Newmarket School Board and the Newmarket Facilities Committee. We'll start off with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, we have a stenographer, if you will, tonight to take minutes, so I thought to help Jen out, we'll go around clockwise and slowly name and, I guess, association. I'm Mike Kennison with the Newmarket School Board.
Elizabeth McKinney, Newmarket School Board.
Kimberly Shelton, Newmarket School Board.
Russ Simon, not on the school board, on the school facilities committee.
Mark Fillion, Facilities Committee.
Skip Manso, Facilities Committee.
Patricia Ballantyne, Assistant to the Superintendent of Schools.
Meredith Nadeau, Future Superintendent in Newmarket.
Amy Clark, and I'm with the Department of Education.
Christopher Anderson, Principal of Newmarket Junior High School.
Sean Pine, Principal of Elementary School.
Brad Prescott from Banwell Architects.
Ingrid Nichols from Banwell Architects.
Nathan Lunny, Newmarket School Board.
You're up, Ian.
Ann Ellis, parent and
Facilities Committee.
Facilities Committee member. Thank you.
And Elena, you are.
Elena Lyon, Facilities Committee.
All right, great. Well, thanks everybody for joining us tonight. The purpose of our joint meeting tonight is out of efficiency and thrift. We're going to go over educational specifications, which we've been hard at work on over the past 3 months with the principals, Sean Pine and Chris Andriski, who've done the bulk of the work, along with the Banwell architectural firm, who's really helped us out, getting our head around them and organizing them and making them presentable. So that's the chief purpose of the meeting tonight, is to go over that. This isn't the final say on the ed specs. This is a discussion, although we do think we've narrowed them down quite a bit. So hopefully we'll make some progress tonight. The meeting is being televised on Channel 13, so people can either watch it now or watch it later. I thought I would just go over a few things. All of the materials we're going to cover tonight are up on the website, the SAU website. They're also on the Facilities Committee page that's within that website. And one document I'd sort of direct the public to, because the spreadsheets can be kind of overwhelming, just looking at them on their face, is to look at the summary document, which basically explains how we arrived at the ed specs, what they are, what the various categories are in the ed specs, how we broke them up into wants and needs and different room categories, how we got there. And I think maybe most helpful is that summary document contains a sort of an executive summary of, in a bullet point fashion, of what's needed at each school. So we can just cut to the chase and people can easily understand what that is. It also gives a total gross square footage based on the numbers in the ed specs themselves, and especially with regard to the junior senior high version, compares that total gross amount to what prior proposals was, so people can sort of have a context for that. But I would start out with that document first. And just to give a little background about how sort of we arrived finally at this version of the ed specs, I think we have to go back to August, when the school board retained Dr. Joyce, and Nate, tell me if I get this right, the New Hampshire School Board Administrators Association?
New Hampshire School Administrators.
School Administrators Association, to do an independent study of our schools, both schools. Dr. Joyce and his colleagues spent several days at each school, both when they were in session and when they were out. They were observing how the students moved around the building, how teachers did their jobs, how administration did their jobs. And I'm summarizing a lot of work, but over the fall they put together a comprehensive report of our educational program and our needs for both schools, which is summarized in a report in October. And they also, Dr. Joyce came and did a presentation in front of the school board on November 5th, and that's on Channel 13 at minute 43. You can, yeah, I've watched it too many times. but the public can see it there. It's up on the Channel 13 archives. So that gives a good background. After that, we began to work on the ed specs for both schools with the principals. And we had a meeting of the Facilities Committee back in late November and went over them and realized that we really needed, frankly, to do more work on them. They weren't where we thought they ought to be. And so we put the brakes on things because these documents are foundational. They're hugely important to any building project. They're what, they're what you give to the architect and engineers and the design team to say, this is what you need to design for us. So we pulled the brakes on that a little bit, I think wisely so. We got together with a Banwell firm and sort of ripped everything apart, threw the seats out of the airplane, made this thing a lot lighter, and that's what we're going to go over tonight. And what I thought we would do, I think the best way to do it is we don't have to go line by line, but this is an informal setting. If you have a question as we're going along here, by all means chime up. But what I thought we would do is go through the elementary school first, and then go through the junior, senior high school, and we'll have the principals start with that. There are two important aspects, and this is explained in the summary document to ed specs, at least two, but the two chief drivers are your projected enrollment and your educational program. And our projected enrollments, you'll see in the ed specs, they're derived from the JAC report, essentially the NESDEC study. And Dr. Joyce also went over those numbers and thought that they were good numbers as well. He incorporated them into his report. So those are the numbers. And when we get to the concept, maybe Ingrid and you can join in and discuss the difference between the base enrollment number and the core space enrollment number, and fundamentally why that is. And actually, why don't we, if you want, we could start right out, because that makes sense.
So basically, you want to always design for your core at a higher number than your actual enrollment, so that if you have spikes in numbers of students and you need to add classroom spaces, you don't have to go back and enlarge the cafeteria, enlarge the nurse, enlarge administration, and all of those core spaces that all of the students use. So really, it's setting the right enrollment, which is the number of kids that you're designing classrooms for, at the right number of children per each classroom, but then having that core be a number higher but not too high, so you're not building those core elements too large. So does that?
Yeah, and I think so. The best way I understood it was in context of our own buildings. I mean, if you take the elementary school, for example, you have a centralized cafeteria and gym. Mm-hmm. I mean, once you build those things and you build stuff around them, it's tough to expand them, and it's tough to expand a gym in general. It's tough to knock out a wall. So that's what we mean by core spaces, the spaces that everybody uses. It could mean the media center as well, mm-hmm. Which are typically located in the center of your building. You have nowhere to go. So you want to, projecting enrollment is not, I guess, as difficult maybe as projecting the economy. There is maybe less room for movement on enrollment, but there is room for movement, and after you're more than 5 years out, it's kind of more of a difficult estimate. So that's why, in distinguishing core spaces from educational spaces, which can be planned in any design and you hope built on the perimeter, or they're just easier to add on later. So I guess that's the concept.
I hear us talk a lot about enrollment, and what you just said, we've said multiple times. Because this will play back over and over, and hopefully people will listen and watch this. You just said outside of 5 years, the enrollment projections get kind of murky. It's worth saying, outside of 5 years, our kindergartners come in at 5. We generally have a really firm sense of who's coming to school and who's here at 5. So 5 years gives us, we run out of live births. Then we only have to project births. Right. We don't know who actually was born and who's actually on the earth. We only know those who might be here. So that's important. I know that people may have heard that at home and dismissed that like it was 5 years is a good crystal ball, more than that's a bad crystal ball. The reality is, it's not about a crystal ball, it's about how many little ones are in diapers that just get here, and when we run out of 5 years, we don't have any more data like that.
So I just have a question, I don't know, maybe, Mr. Pine, you know this. In terms of spike years, have we had spike years, say in the last 10 years? And do we know kind of, when we talk about spike, how is that defined? Is that an increase of 10, 20?
Yeah, I mean, right now, for instance, the sixth grade class that is sitting at the middle school, last year they're at my school, and that had 101 fifth graders in it. I have a similar kind of a spike class right now sitting in second grade that has around 99 kids. Compared to other classes, that's anywhere from 20 to 15 more kids per grade level.
That translates
So,
into another teacher, another
yes,
classroom. At the
another
elementary
classroom
level, it's
space
adding a
at
classroom.
elementary level.
Thank you. Just
Yeah.
little things that I think go by and people don't necessarily understand why we said what we just said, so, thank you.
So that's the notion between why we have, dual enrollment figures for educational space versus core space. And with that, I guess, Sean, maybe you can go through your version for the elementary school.
Sure, do you want me I was thinking maybe I could work from the inside out?
Yep.
Talk maybe a little bit about the front of the building as well?
Sure.
And talk about a little bit of how the day gets kicked off. And then
Absolutely.
what I was going to do is talk about some of these things that do not currently exist in the programs that they offer. If people want me to change midstream, just let me know. Feel free to ask questions. So anyways, many of you have been to the elementary school in the morning and the afternoon. Currently, in the morning, we have both the parent pickup and the buses using the front of the building. It is also where majority of our staff parking is. What that has caused is that it becomes extremely congested. Many of my staff people joke around if they don't get there, well before 8 o'clock, they get stuck in the traffic trying to get into the school. Hopefully, if we have the McGrath property in hand in the future, that can be alleviated, because what we would like to do is to have 2 separate drop-off areas. One would be for the parents to drop off their children perhaps in the front of the building, and the buses would be able to circle behind the building and drop off their loads there, or vice versa. We currently can't do that just because in the back of the building, there's no really easy access into the core part of the building. We don't want the kids to be in the classroom space. So that is kind of the picture in the morning. Conversely, in the afternoon, we do some of our buses, our first run of buses, through the back of the building, but we have many, many parents who come to pick up their kids. And I think this year we've seen an uptick because we've had the full-day kindergarten, so I picked up anywhere from 40 to 50 extra cars coming in. There is virtually no parking in the afternoon at my school. We are short, I would say, at least 50 spaces. And kind of to reiterate, if you have an appointment where I need to get down to the SAU office by 3 o'clock, I need to leave by 2:45, because I won't get out of the parking lot, because people are literally parked in the driveways of the parking lot coming in to get their kids. So it's extremely congested. If we had that McGrath property, I think that would also help to alleviate, because we could talk about maybe additional parking as well, so we don't run into that. If you go around to the side of the building, the playground area that we have is pretty undersized for the amount of kids that we put out there. You figure we're putting anywhere from 75 to close to 100 kids, depending on the grade level, out at recess. The equipment's fine, it's just the space extremely tight. There's no real place for kids. If they wanted to play soccer safely somewhere, it's very hard for them to have that. Ideally, again, looking if we reconfigure the McGrath property, I know there's some ideas kicking around of how that would be used. We could expand the playground area as well. also move it closer to the building so we don't have a driveway going in between the playground and the building. That's a safety factor because sometimes we don't try to have it happen, but sometimes deliveries come when we have recess. And, obviously the concern is that the children or the driver of the truck is not going to see some children by the playground area. So that's kind of the general consensus of the outdoor space that we have. Kind of moving indoors, move indoors a little bit. We have portables right now. In my portables, I have 4 classrooms. They serve as 3 fifth-grade classrooms currently and a 4th-grade classroom. I also have my speech and language program out there. I have 2 special ed people working out there as well. It serves as math office for our math interventionist, data manager's office, also a small instructional space within those offices as well. The portables, kids have to move in and out of the building. They go to lunch, go to any of their Unified Arts specials during the day. So it does take up a little bit of time during the day from moving from that back of the building all the way to the core facility itself. To move 20 kids takes a bit of time. Another thing is, ideally, in terms of safety, I know that's something we're looking at as well. It's not the most safe environment that we can provide our students. It's much better to have them within the core facility itself. Yep.
And just to remind everybody, when you have those 20 kids walking through the hallway, we also have all that equipment in the hallway,
right,
plus other kids moving around. So it's extremely congested.
Yes, yeah, yep. So if you kind of look at the spreadsheet that you have in front of you, what I was going to do is go over and just talk about some of the things that are mentioned here. For instance, you'll see the second line down, pre-K, and then it says not exist. Our pre-K program, or our preschool program, is a program that is designed primarily to help those children who are not of kindergarten age but have special needs or developmentally delayed. We bring them into the school in an effort to give them early foundational skills, early intervention, in hopes that it's going to alleviate what they will need for services when they come into school. That program right now services around 35 kids. It's 8 at a time, 8 to 10 at a time. It's a split session program. The room that is currently there is extremely undersized. You're talking, a lot of these kids need specialized equipment that they bring with them. They could be wheelchairs, it could be standards. They have to have large changing tables for some of the kids because they're still not out of diapers at that time. So the room is really tight. If we could get an additional room for that, it would be great. I think you will most likely see those numbers start to increase a little bit. We are mandated by law to provide these services to kids. And it seems those numbers have actually grown as the years have gone through. So that's the preschool program, kind of in a nutshell. Kindergarten, you'll see just one thing down there, that the kindergarten's rooms are supposed to be 1,000 square feet. We currently have a new kindergarten room that does not meet that standard, so we're looking to try to expand that room to meet that state standard. It wouldn't be a completely brand new room. It would be somehow configured so we can make it to meet that standard. Kindergarten rooms typically all have bathrooms within them, so that the children do not have to be in the gang bathrooms in the hallway further down. On the second page, you will notice that.
John, can I just point out something?
Sure.
On the first page? There's after you get done the kindergarten rooms, you see all the rooms from first grade down to fifth, and those there's notes in those columns there. Those are close to the DOE standards.
Right.
You wouldn't need to bring those up to a DOE standard. They serve the purpose, even though they're slightly below it. So just so that's clear, that's what those comments mean.
And you can see at the bottom, actually, where at the bottom rooms, you can see that I indicated that they were located in the portable. So those 3 fifth-grade rooms and a 4th-grade classroom are in portables at this point in time. So we're looking, again, to move those within the building itself, outside of the portables. If you kind of go down to the second row there, there's an art kiln that our art teacher uses for her pottery classes that she teaches with all grades. Currently, that kiln is located in a storage facility in the back of the school. The kiln is in with other supplies such as PE supplies, paper supplies, that sort of thing. It is there on the condition that we have a wide berth around it, so we don't have any hazards come up for it because of the heat that they kick off. It's used throughout the year. So the kiln, we're looking to have an additional space for that so it can be, within a good safe area within the building and easy access into the art room. Currently, the art teacher has to march all her pottery that the kids have done, cart it all the way into the back storage room, get past pallets of paper, soccer balls, that sort of thing, and go to the back corner and load it up. So that is something that we're looking at.
I guess I never even noticed that, Sean. Is that where I put the basketball equipment? Is that like in back of the gym?
Yeah, it's in the back right-hand corner of that storage room 124. It's right by the doorways. It's not the best.
Wait until classes are over for the day.
Right.
After a group of children has done pottery. She has to wait until the end of the day so that she's not walking to a class.
Yep. The other thing that we would like to get, we have a strong instrumental music program. Jamie Ray, who's the director of that program, has done a fantastic job in growing the program. Currently, we have about 65 fourth and fifth graders in the program. How it runs now is that she comes over from the middle school at 11:30 and is there until 12:30. And then she comes back at 2:30 until 3 to offer small group instruction. Band as a collective unit, beginning year band and end of the year band, or second year band, is taught after school as well. The one kind of glitch with this system is that she needs a space to use, and we have to design our schedule around making the availability of the music room. So that kind of hinders how we can schedule the rest of our specials for the remainder of the school for the children. Currently, she's in the band room, and in afternoon from 2:30 to 3, she's in the cafeteria. So we're looking at a dedicated space for her so she doesn't have to come in, grab stuff out of the music room, bring it into the cafeteria, place for kids to store their band equipment during the day. Right now, they cart it down to the classroom, have to pick it up, and some of those trombones are bigger than the kids themselves. So it would be great to have a dedicated area that she could kind of have as a home. I would love to be able to have this space because I think it gives us an opportunity to perhaps one day talk about bringing that program down to a lower level as well for the kids. So it does, the current configuration, it works, but it does put limitations on the schedule for the rest of the building just because we have to make that time available for her in the music room during the day. English as a second language, ESOL. We currently have around 25 kids who receive language services. That's a program that is given to kids who are non-native speakers to English, or they're from a house where their parents are speaking maybe Spanish or something on that line. Right now, they are in one room. I have 3 ESOL instructors. They share one room with 3 desks, a small instructional space. A lot of my ESLO services, some occur in that space when the other 2 are out providing services either as a push-in model in the classroom itself, or they too either use the cafeteria or sometimes the library to provide those services. So we're looking to find extra space for those teachers to work with their kids.
How many students were there?
Currently, it's about 25. We've had more. It fluctuates to some kids, test out of the program after a while because they become more proficient at the English language. So it does fluctuate depending on the year. Yep. We also are looking to have a room, it's marked down here as Gaines. It's actually kind of an alternative educational setting for those kids who have severe disabilities. Those would be kids that are maybe wheelchair bound. Those kids may have severe autism. They may be developmentally delayed. That room would be to provide services for those children. Those services could be anywhere from kind of almost like physical therapy type settings, that sort of thing. It comes in with a lot of equipment that they have to bring along. A lot of that equipment currently is actually stored in the hallway. It's stored in the phone room. It's some of the services take place out in the hallway, so it's not really an ideal setting for these children at this point in time. Questions on that? Am I going too fast, too slow? I'm just trying to.
No,
Okay.
This is fine. I mean, I think, as I always said all along, it matters, the why is really what I think
Right.
people need to understand. I mean, they can
Yep.
read what the room is, but
Yep.
why do we need it? How is the program now?
Sure.
You know, how might it better be served?
Yep. Okay.
The other thing I'd like to point out too is not in all cases have the square footages gone higher than what exists. We really went back and forth to figure out what the needs were and what the space needs were. So some of these numbers, the program numbers, have actually gone down, depending upon the need.
Right, reconfiguring the space.
So a couple of
Yep.
questions. One,
Sure.
I mean, I'm jumping ahead because I'm connecting the couple of the rooms you just talked about with rooms on the coming page. But in the area of ESOL and Title I,
Correct.
we have some federal funding. I'm wondering, where did our space expectations come for those areas? And I guess the further question is there federal expectation, federal mandate, because of federal dollars, about space requirements for some of those programs?
Not to my
Not
knowledge.
to my knowledge,
No,
no.
it's based on your program.
Yeah.
So then the other thing is, with regard to gains and/or special ed, any of these rooms specifically need bathroom, shower, kind of wet areas built in somewhere? 'Cause I didn't see that.
Some may need those like,
At least one.
right, and a lot of them need at least like sinks and that sort of thing. So, part of some of the programs are for kids to be able to maybe even if they're severely have impairments, to be able to wash their hands or use a toothbrush correctly or something on that line. So it's a lot of life skills. So you have to have kind of a sink area, maybe a small kitchen set up for it, that sort of thing, in those rooms. And some of them may require a shower in there as well. Yep.
Is that something that would be useful to add on some
Well,
of these?
I was wondering, because that's a pretty, somewhere in gains and/or special ed, there's a,
Right. I think that's something that, as we move further with that process, we
Refresh.
can find out whether, that's something we want to put in and have there.
Support equipment required.
Right, exactly. No, right now, I don't have a shower in my school whatsoever. I mean, there is one that's, I think at one time was in the nurse's office, but it's been converted into storage space.
at the very least, in one space somewhere in that building, there's got to be a
Should be.
space for a larger third, fourth, fifth grader with diapering, with, personal body care, with cleaning.
Right.
You've got to have something like that, so let's not forget that when we,
Because the student would have to go home,
yeah,
as of
well,
right now.
and that's, maybe right now they'd have to, but that certainly isn't, that's not legal, that's not their obligation. Our obligation is to be prepared to deal with that, so.
Right.
So when you say converted, I assume nobody spent any money converting it, they're just storing boxes in the shower.
Correct. It is, yeah, they didn't gut it or anything, it's just, yeah, I think it has, one of those expandable coat hangers in there.
I don't want to drag us to minutia, but I just wanted to make
Nope,
sure we
that's
didn't
fine.
miss, a couple of those things. Thank you very much.
Math intervention. Math intervention is a program designed to help kids who are struggling in their acquiring grade level math skills. We have interventionists that currently are housed in the portable. So they are in the same space that my data manager shares as well. They do some instruction there, Most of my math intervention is taking place either in the hallways, excuse me, or in the cafeteria when available. You'll hear the cafeteria gets used a lot. That's even limited to where we can use it because of how often we have to use the cafeteria, which I'll get to later. But, so the math intervention is a one-on-one teacher working maybe with a group of 3 or 4 kids, providing services to get them back up to speed in their math skills. So, like I said, they are sharing one office area. They do some instruction in there when possible. But again, they may be doing instruction when my data manager is working on the computer and another interventionist is working in there as well. So it's not the best setting for that sort of thing. Cafeteria and hallways are also used for those services.
So just to Ingrid's point just now, I mean, the existing room for math intervention it's room 403. It's at 429 square feet. So what's being proposed here is a reduction of almost 200 square feet, but just breaking it up into 2 rooms.
Yeah.
But bringing the total square footage down, which we might be able to use for something else.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Yep.
Well, to that, is that suggesting, and I know how to put this all together so that it flows and the plans, et cetera, but as Mike said, you're saying, where you're saying not exist, you're saying that existing space is enough, in theory, if you didn't have to touch it to create the 2 rooms?
No. Basically, they're in the portable now in a space that's 429 square feet.
Okay.
So programmatically, it's better to have 2 separate spaces. So we've actually done 2 spaces that are appropriately sized, which are under what square footage they're in
Right,
now.
but since it's, I gather, since it's in the portable, you're not going to...
Right, exactly.
Right, gotcha. Okay.
We're trying to balance using existing walls with the classrooms and not moving everything around, which increases the cost, with the actual needs and the space needs of their current and future programs.
Just to clarify, this particular spec ed model is an attempt to eliminate the portables. There's
Yes.
no,
Yes.
we're not going to incorporate those in.
Correct.
We're hoping not to incorporate
Yes.
those in.
Right, right. And your portables, I mean, the one we have in there is nice now, but we're trying to build for many years down the road, and inevitably they run their life expectancy, and then you have to go get another one.
Yeah, it may be visually, if you want to put portable somewhere in just that it stands out that this
Okay.
is not gonna,
Yep.
this is disappearing.
Right.
It's
Good.
not that it's existing and you can move around.
Actually, if you look at the last page, because we actually itemize the square footage of the existing portable, so everybody can understand what sort of square footage contribution those 2 buildings are making to the overall facility.
Gotcha.
It's about 6,000, just under 6,000 square feet.
Right, but as you're going through this, you're also talking about, if I understood it correctly, that you're trying to put classrooms in the groups you have somewhat together, not in dispersed throughout the school, but kind of co-locate, as we talked about core, whether it's for art or outside or 3rd grade classes. So this is something that just has to be totally moved within its own space, this combination of classrooms. Okay. That just doesn't hop out when you're looking at it.
That portable conversation, I appreciate you putting that out there. That's no small thing. That's 9, it's almost 10%, 9%, it's 9% of the total square footage we have now is out in sheds, essentially. I mean, I'm a taxpayer, I'm paying for that, and it's a pretty expensive shed, but it was never intended to, you wouldn't want to live in it, you know what, I mean, it's not a school.
Not a
It's
permanent fixture.
It's not a permanent fixture.
Yeah, right.
Okay, 9%, thank you.
And just a follow-up real quick. Wasn't there some structural issue with something with one of the portables a year or 2 ago? Am I remembering that correctly? That there was,
We got rid of it and replaced it.
and what was the issue that developed? It just
Well, number one, it was
old.
old, it had reached that useful life, and, but there were also some questions about its footing and how it had been planted in the first place, and there'd been some, what do you call it, shifting, it had,
Shimming up to get it neat.
it had,
Yes.
Settle.
it was settling. It was settling, which was creating problems with water penetration and the like, so that's why it's gone. And the other one has been planted very well for a not
Sturdily.
permanent structure.
Kind of moving on, occupational therapy and physical therapy, just to kind of rehash what our occupational and physical therapy people do is they work with kids who may have some physical limitations. It could be developmentally in terms of like stuff like balance. It could be kids that are have limitations in terms of muscle movement, that sort of thing. So they provide services in terms of therapeutic services to those kids in order to strengthen core muscle groups, leg muscles, arm muscle, that sort of thing. The occupational therapists are the people who work with the children to make adaptations for them. How are they going to compensate for the lack of the mobility of certain parts of the body, that sort of thing. Currently, they are housed in one small room in my special ed part of my building. Again, this type of services requires a lot of specialized equipment, and that equipment is stored within the room itself, so it kind of impacts on the services that they can provide. So they do sometimes provide services out in the hallway. Many times they have to have a large massage table or changing table in that area as well. That when you're talking about a child who's in 4th or 5th grade, it's going to be pretty darn big. It's probably by 6 by 8 feet type of surface as well. And so we're looking to get more space for them right now. They're currently around 600 feet, looking to make about a 900-foot area for them. So they can provide those services in there, have adequate space within the room itself to have the storage, so they have that equipment when the child comes in. They don't have to go down the hallway, pick it up, come back into the room with it. Moving on to page 3. Let me get there myself. Reading and Title I services. These are services provided to children that are struggling, emerging readers. They may be behind by a grade level or 2, or maybe have something like dyslexia, something on that line. So it's to provide services for kids who are struggling for reading in a nutshell. We have 3 instructional spaces with 6 instructors sharing those spaces. So you have 2 instructors in both rooms. Those rooms serve as office space for those people as well as instructional space. So a lot of times you'll have services, they'll have a small area where a teacher may be working with a group of kids, and when you're talking reading, the kids are reading aloud, that sort of thing, you can't have the other teacher have the service at the same time. So we're, again, looking for alternative space right now for those reading services to take place.
I don't know if this is, if I'm going to ask the question right, but in looking at the space, I don't know the percentage of special needs kids. I thought, at least in the high school, a number in the high teens or low 20s, which may or may not be high compared to others. But from a space needs, it seems, both from the individualized nature of some of the issues you may be dealing with specialized needs, as well as the space, that there's a disproportionate amount of not only human resources, but space resources. And so I just didn't know if there was some general, I hate to say rule of thumb.
I wouldn't really say rule of thumb. Title I and reading services, they're not necessarily kids who are have the coding of or an IEP. It could be a child that is just struggling as being an emerging reader, so we're trying to catch them up to the speed. They usually get screened through various tests that we administer during the year, and we say, this child is having trouble with phonemic awareness, so let's get them in so they can have extra work for that. That's the same sort of thing with the math intervention, too, that takes place. It isn't necessarily a child who has an IEP. It may be a child who is identified as struggling at this point, but with that extra time during the day of getting that either math or reading service that they get caught up, so they can be more back into the classroom more.
Okay, I also add something on that too. You'll see it a lot in the high school too, but with special education programming, the program we conduct or we look to do keeps kids in district. And by keeping kids in district, that's what's keeping the cost down. So there is extra spaces, but
absolutely.
that's a lot of the why we have these spaces. To keep kids in district, which could cost, one kid could cost up to $250,000 a year. So that's a lot of the why we have these spaces based on the.
No, well aware both of the tuitioning versus, I don't know if it's still called mainstreaming, the words change all the time, but I recognize Newmarket's focus at being able to integrate and maintain the special needs kids inside the program rather than spin them outside. Thank you.
I don't have a number off the top of my head.
I can tell you we have 26 in reading and 21 in math.
It fluctuates.
It's about 10%.
So do I take this space, like 120 square foot space, three of them don't exist, and we need three. Are those individual rooms with a door and closed in on a ceiling as opposed to a partitioned off area?
Correct. Yep, yes.
And especially with reading, you want that for the audible and privacy.
Right. Right now, what they do is they kind of they make a mock wall, and they split it in with some bookcases and books and file cabinets, and they're providing the services and that sort of setup, so.
So you have the cubicles now, but what you need is a room.
Right, correct.
And it looks like, just by my rough math, you have about 800 square feet dedicated to it now, and something a little less than that. You have three spaces at almost 800 square feet. You need six, split up into 120 blocks.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
it's 785 versus 720, so the actual goes down. You have 785 and it's 720 that is asked for. Almost a
Well, the
balance.
model that starts moving all these classrooms around for the most efficient space utilization and stuff like that has got to be amazing, because I can't just think a human being these days is spending all that time trying to figure out how to crank these 7 rooms in the most efficient way.
Moving down, we're looking for a sensory room. This room is to provide children that may be autistic and maybe children that have needs in which they get easily upset. They need some room for either it has a built-in swing, it's a more of a quiet space for these children. That room would be located within the special ed area as well. So we're looking to provide that currently does not exist within the building. Speech and language program, it's working again with kids who have difficulty at various forms of language, oral language. Right now, they are providing services out in the portable, and we're, again, looking to pull that instructional space in. I have 2 speech and language pathologists that work within the building. In the portable right now, they share that space. And it's similar to the reading intervention, and it's hard to have 2 groups of kids working on 2 different things in terms of speech instruction. So
Maybe-
it's not an ideal setting.
Maybe a out-of-line question, but what percentage of the time are the portables utilized? Seems to me like it's 115%.
The whole portable? Well, yeah, when you look at it, one portable has just 2 fifth-grade classrooms, so that's there. The only time it's not being used is when they're at gym or a unified arts special type thing, cafeteria, or recess. So you're looking at an hour and 50 minutes, hour and 45 minutes in the day when that room will be not in use with all those kids in there. So the portables themselves, they're used pretty much throughout the school day. Certain spaces may be vacant at different times, given that it's a teacher break or the kids are at lunch and that sort of thing. But they're used
Pretty well maxed out.
pretty well maxed out, just like a regular classroom in the building currently. Yeah.
I should know this, but how are they heated and cooled?
There's air conditioning units in there, And heating is through forced hot air that comes off, I believe, a propane heating. Am I right on that?
Yeah, I think you got 5 minutes in there.
Can
Yeah.
I just ask, so for the last almost page and a page or so, we're talking about some of them special ed or enhanced classrooms, does it make sense to think about like a wing where most of these educational services are offered? Or is this something that like?
There are different philosophies to that.
Yeah, and that's something that, a lot of people say that for maybe speech and language for younger kids, you want to have one of those rooms close to the grades 1, 2, and 3, and then have another one of the offices for those people who are working with the upper elementary. I've seen it both ways when it's been dispersed throughout the building in that fashion. I've seen it where there is almost a wing. I kind of prefer that it's dispersed within, so it's kind of a seamless transition. So a child, you don't think about it, but when you get to be 4th or 5th grade and you're walking down to another part of the building where none of your friends go.
For your special services.
Yeah.
It's bad enough when we have to pull out and we can't deliver in the classroom. It's worse still if we have to pull out to another country practically, so.
It also promotes a lot more collaboration with the classroom teacher because
Right.
they're better able to integrate and have conversation about what's happening on a ongoing basis.
But just from a physical nature, it goes along with the mainstreaming concept of making
Absolutely.
people feel
Right.
like a part of what's going on.
Right.
Thank you.
Great.
Great question.
Further down, you'll see this one called Zen Den, AKA a timeout room. We're looking for 3. That would be, again, 1 in the main office, 1 dispersed in the lower elementary, 1 in the upper elementary. This is just a room where it could be any child. They're just not with the program that day, and they need time to be under supervision and a chance to recollect themselves. Currently, those kids come down to our office. If I have my conference room available, we'll use that. If not, they sit in my office while I work. It's, something that we're looking for, and it's well worth it. Right now, when I have to talk to a child in my office for maybe a discipline issue, and I have to keep them in the office for a while, sometimes they're in the middle of the office, in my office, in the conference room. My assistant principal doesn't have a true office. It's a cubicle area. So there's no privacy. So if a child is having a hard day and they're melting down in my office, everybody knows. So we're looking for a place where kids can recollect themselves, where it's a more private setting. It's not going to disturb the flow of the office, not going to disturb a classroom setting. That sort of thing.
And it would be a safer place, because you're
Safer.
in the
Yeah.
office with file cabinets.
Oh, yeah,
Throwable
exactly. These rooms would typically have a chair and a small desk and, supervision of an adult there. And it's a chance for, sometimes you can tell when a child starts to escalate. It's like, you need to get them out before they lose their cool. And, 15 minutes in a room like that, it can just reset the child for the entire day.
So going to the Zen room replaces going to the principal's office is what you're,
At times it
Do the
can,
kids
yeah, because
go
it shouldn't be considered, I look at that when a child needs to kind of regain their composure. A lot of times it's not things that they've done in school, it's things they're carrying in from home, and when you bring them down to the office, they get the idea that they're being punished or they don't have the privacy. It's a shame that it has to work that way.
We've created one at the junior, senior high school, and it's a place you go as an intervention before you have to go to the principal's office. So if we know a student is about to have an episode because we've collected data, at 11 o'clock, Johnny always has an episode. Teachers will bring him into that room to work with him before that episode. It's a
and you're
very,
suggesting it's always supervised. It's not
Yes,
always
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
get educated every moment through this.
On page 4, talking about our cafeteria. Currently, I run 6 lunches in my cafeteria, starting anywhere from 10:50 in the morning and ending at 1:20 in the afternoon. What we would like to do is have a bigger cafeteria. The idea is to take over the gym space. That would allow me to run 3 lunches would combine grades like K1, 2, 3, and 4, 5. So we'd have smaller lunch period overall, encompassing the day, but with 2 grades. It would also maybe work in the time that they could have some little more time than the 25 minutes that they currently have, which turns into more like 15 by the time they get through the line and sit down and start to eat. So we're looking to expand the cafeteria hopefully into that gymnasium space that abuts it. It also would provide, a better atmosphere for the cafeteria in general. The gymnasium, our gymnasium is pretty undersized. It's a very tight space. I was talking to Nancy Miller, who is a fantastic gym teacher. It's amazing the program that she offers. But when you put 15, 16 third graders, fourth graders in there, she can't have them really run in the gym. They kind of have to gallop or skip through the gym because it's just not enough space for kids to careen through. The space does limit some of the things that she can do within the building itself. If we had a new gym, it would also be larger, but it would also be a good place to hold school-based assemblies as well. When we do that now, we have to take over both the gym and the cafeteria, and it's a tight fit. So we're looking for a gymnasium that's more appropriate in size. You wouldn't necessarily be looking at something the size of the high school, but the gym that it would accommodate. There's gyms that are scaled based on elementary school, if I'm not speaking out of turn on that. So right now, the gym we have does not even meet that minimum standard for an elementary school. Additionally, that gym gets used a lot by after-school programs as well. So it's an opportunity to have a facility that can be open to the rec department or school-based, town-based teams as well, and allow a little let-up of what's going on at the gym in the high school in terms of that.
So if we did have a wish list, we could wish for a larger high school-sized gym that we could rent it out. I mean, we used to have a basketball league at Great Bay Gym. I don't know where they go now, but could it be moneymaker? Is the insurance too high, Mr. Business Administrator? Like, is it worthwhile to even put on a wish list?
I mean, community?
Yeah, like maybe more of a
community.
Yeah.
You mean upsize it with greater maybe seating for bleachers with an opportunity to go 2 across as opposed to just 1 long, so that you could do more in there if it was a community, if it was built more for community use?
I think it's unlikely to be a fundraising source.
Yeah.
So that'd probably be pretty infrequent, but I would imagine that it would be a valued community resource. I mean, you know how much of a premium gym space is
Right.
typically.
What's 7,000 getting a square feet? Does that have 2 full-length courts going widthwise?
No,
It's not.
that's like
one middle.
That's the high school. What the high school's
Okay.
got, we can go,
Yes, that's
Without, and no bleachers.
and no bleachers in there? Okay.
yeah.
To go back to your point real quickly, though, I've had some conversation with some area high schools about the use of their auditoriums, and what they have told me is that they're not necessarily revenue generators, but they are helpful in offsetting other costs. So these are just preliminary
Yeah.
conversations that I've had.
Great, thank you. Kind of moving down, administrative offices, the front office area. I spoke a little bit about that a few minutes ago.
Yeah, to skip the kitchen.
Oh, kitchen.
Kitchen.
Right. Yeah, kitchen, I'm not a kitchen expert, but the kitchen right now is pretty tight in terms of food prep space. Storage for the kitchen area as well is pretty tight. If we expanded the cafeteria, so we were servicing 2 grades at a time, we wouldn't want to make sure we have the functional capacity of the kitchen itself for kids, for them to have the meals prepped and delivered to the children at that time.
Gotcha, thank you.
What's that?
Yeah, that's what I should-
Moving on to the front office area, admin office, What we're really looking for is, one, we would love to have the assistant principal have her own office. She is in a cubicle in the back corner of the office, does not provide much privacy whatsoever, and it's, I think that's enough said on that part.
How does it affect day-to-day job function?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just she can't help,
Most
she.
people don't. Most
Right,
people aren't.
right. With the cubicle there, if she needs to make a phone call to a parent about a child or a concern, or she can't have a private conversation on the phone line because everyone can hear it. Again, if she needs to discipline a student, it's around the corner in the cubicle, and you can hear how the interaction is going on both ends. So it's just a sheer lack of privacy for it. She is, does a yeoman's job at scheduling and working with teachers, and to be sitting in that little cubicle area, it really doesn't afford the privacy that she deserves, and the people that she work with deserve as well in that space. She is the part of the heart and soul of that front office.
She's back there, and there are a couple assistants in the office, too?
Right.
Admin, right?
Yep.
Right there.
Yeah, so when you walk in, you'll go through, and there's two administrative assistants there that work in the office. And then in the back kind of cubicle area, her cubicle abuts right behind the first secretary that you would see as you walk through the door. So it's very an open office, basically. After 8 feet, there's nothing going up fully to the ceiling, so it's not enclosed whatsoever. Also, with the front office, we really don't have much in terms of a file storage area. File cabinets are found within the conference room itself. File cabinets are found scattered throughout the main office. That brings up some questions of, security of those cabinets. They're fireproof, that sort of thing. They can be locked, but they really need to have their own kind of file storage area within the office for access as well. Kind of moving down a little bit, we're also proposing a conference room / testing room that would be located close to my guidance and school psychologist area. Right now, there is really no space provided for them to have that sort of setup. Any screenings that they may need to do for a child, or working with Seacoast Mental Health, who also come in, we use the conference room in the main office. So that, or they have to, we ask the guidance counselor or the school psychologist to be out of their office for the day. So they are either working in the teacher's room or any other space that they can find. So we're looking for a conference / small testing room that would be located somewhere close to my school psychologist's office and guidance office. We have a data manager, Amy Rossi. She crunches all our testing, sets up all the testing for the school. Right now, her office exists in the portable that is shared with 3 math interventionists as well. So we're looking for an area for her to call home in terms of for her to be able to truly run the reports, get the numbers out, set up for testing, and that sort of thing. Any questions on page 4? Because I'm going to talk a little bit about the nurse that starts at the bottom page 4 but goes up to the top of page 5. I don't know if many people have been into where my nurse's office is. It's the next door right after the main office. To say it's undersized is being generous. Her office consists of a main office area, bathroom facility, and then a small room that has 1 cot for a child to lay down. There is no waiting area in her office. The children are waiting in her office while she is working with students who may need health assistance. There's a lot of tube feedings going on at the time, so we pull a curtain around one corner of her main office area, so I may be in there with a sore throat at the same time someone is getting a tube feeding or a diaper change or something on that lines. There's no place where she can pull in a parent and say, gee, talk about what she thinks needs to be done in terms of visiting their family physician or anything on that line. So it's very undersized. We're looking to expand that office so she will have a waiting area, a room where she can pull in the kids and, assess them in a private setting, and also need to have some extra space where kids can lay down. We only have one cot right now, only space for one cot right now. So if you're the first one there and you have more coming in that need it, we unfortunately have no place to put them. So given the size of right now with 535 kids, the nurse's office is a hubbub of activity. Kids are coming in for medication throughout the day, and not also counting kids with strep throat or the run-of-the-mill ailments that children get during the school day. It's a very busy place. And,
If you've ever been there during a flu season.
yeah, this
It's
year
not
was
pretty.
flu and strep throat was not good to our school this year.
No.
So we're looking to make that a little bit bigger.
I'm just flipping through I can't find it immediately, but I know that, I recall reading something in the DOE standards about, nurses' space, and it looks like you're looking for 80 square feet. Is that big enough for what you've just described, or?
Well, I think the office itself, because if you look right there, we have kind of the office area for her to work and hold as a waiting room. I think that's big enough, but if you have that separate kind of waiting area with cots and built in, she can use that as part of the exam area. There is a bathroom in there that would nice to get back a functional shower as well that we would take a look at.
Okay.
I believe at the bottom of page 4, I kind of skipped through there too. I'm sorry, let me get to page 4 again.
If I may.
Sure.
In the educational standards, which
Yeah.
was part of the handouts, the pages are numbered, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages in.
It's 320, which one?
320,
2112.
yeah, 32112, item C. So it just kind of gives you a sense of what the minimum sizes are. When you add up all the spaces in the ed spec that's in here, we'd be on target.
Okay, because it lists, it's pretty specific, exclusive administration space, a waiting area.
Right.
Space for examining.
So it says patient isolation area, which includes one cot for every 200 pupils. Does that mean that there should be 3
Correct.
200 square feet with a cot for 500 pupils?
Right, because we're close to
And
close to
that's when-
550.
That's a perfect example of what we want to design to core. So you want to actually design the nurse to fit 605 kids, so you don't have to blow out a wall if you get to that.
So what we've got here satisfies that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just a quick follow-up, it seems to me, thinking about where the nurse's office is, and I guess this is a question for Ingrid. So the nurse's office is in the, in the, kind of the entryway, right? So if you move that to somewhere else, you're thinking also about, there is then that space.
Correct.
Which might make a great vice principal's office or
Correct.
something along this line. So you're, okay, thank you.
And we'll do options to show, and we'll hopefully end up with the best option.
Based on this, just a quick, maybe it's a difference that I see between the high school and the elementary school, but in the beginning of the elementary school report, you had a series of the standard classrooms saying the space need may be greater, but we're going to put the same number in and look for an adjustment or a waiver or whatever.
Right.
Where in the high school, unless it's changed, I've gone through it a couple times, but I don't know if I've seen the latest version, it seemed to have the extra 30 or 80 feet of space in a 900-foot classroom where you'd say to in reading it, and I know I asked Mike the question, gee, would this be a classroom that you'd say if it's 90% of the space, it's close enough, because it also gets into the numbers of square footage. So I didn't know if we took 2 different approaches in the 2 looks at these, or whether the high school has said gee, this 900 square foot classroom, we can put it in at 883 because that's what the space is, and it wouldn't have to necessarily be changed. Do we do the same, I guess, on both? is
Right.
what I'm saying.
The intent is to meet the programmatic educational needs first, but then also look at your existing spaces to see how we can fit. And if it's close enough, that's when we go to the Department of Ed and ask for those variances based on your program needs. So it's kind of a balancing act as we go through this exercise.
Okay, and so is it to suggest that the elementary school leans itself a little bit more towards using some of the existing classrooms?
It does.
Where the high school may not have that same, even if it's within 10%?
Right. And I think the condition of the elementary school, the tiles and everything is a step above where the existing middle high school is.
Okay. I find these things valuable to even put down as people, as we read them or other people read them, the fact that there's a lot of subtle things that are going on here, and the goal is to try to be using the space
Correct.
as efficiently as we can, especially in this pass. So it's more of, gee, don't look at it if it's within 60 feet, and you're saying you need the extra 60 feet. There's a reason behind it. It's just not a mathematical exercise of
Right.
looking at the standards.
If it was a brand-new school, it would be completely different, but we have to be frugally responsible as long as it meets the educational needs.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it for explaining to not only the committee, because some of us know this, some of us are learning every day here, but also the general public, and understanding some of those needs, I think becomes clearer when you have an explanation. Thank you.
I just add, I hope, part of it also, and the difference between the two buildings is that we haven't really talked about, we're going to build a whole new elementary school. That hasn't really been the plan, that I don't think, that we have entertained very much here, maybe only in the kind of broadest sense, whereas that question in terms of what the community wants to do and what this committee, I think, is coming up with about whether or not we're doing an ad reno to the junior, senior high school versus building a new building, there's still a lot to be weighed there to make that decision. And so to kind of reflect that in the space, and I know we're not talking about the junior, senior high school yet, but is also really important, that it could go either way, right?
That's a good point, Ann, because if we utilize, like we did with the elementary school, if we utilize those smaller square footages in those needs and we ended up going the new school route, then our target foundation of this program would be artificially lower. So we've actually been more conservative in the high school, middle school program, because we don't know if we're going to renovate or build new.
Okay.
But those, another way to look at it, if I'm getting this right, is that this is fine. That we're straying off a little bit here because it's going to come up anyways. Is the junior, senior high has, for each one of the spaces in a column, it has pretty much the DOE standard. Another way of looking at it, if you built new, that's probably what you'd have to build to.
Exactly.
So you can kind of parallel where you'd be.
But if we ended up or looking at the renovation, obviously some of these needs, even though we're listing 900, if we can reuse existing rooms, they'll go down.
Right. In another complicating factor, and this is a little confusing, is that if you look at Dr. Joyce's report, and he mentioned it during his presentation, over the years, the high school's sort of been put together and has a hodgepodge of hallways and this and that, and the total square footage is a little misleading, because it's not total usable square footage. If you had built a new building, some of that square footage would be eliminated. You wouldn't have all these hallways going this way and that way, and these weird triangles and all that sort of stuff.
Well, and some of the classrooms are a little irregular in the junior, senior high school, so although the square footage looks pretty good for a room, it's a tunnel, or maybe it's an L shape, or,
Like a habitable.
Right.
Amateur.
That's what you think of.
Moving on, kind of something, I guess it's looking for a special education conference room. Special ed, right now, all those conferences take place in the admin office and the main office. What we run into a lot of times is that we have two meetings occurring at the same time, maybe one special ed and one could be with a consultant to the school, or one could be a meeting with a parent. And so we use the conference room, then we either use the guidance office, or we use my office, or someone else. So we're trying to see if we can get a conference room dedicated for special education. We'd be in the area where the special ed rooms would be. Moving on, the special education staff would have one office. It would house all my special education teachers in it. That is something that would allow them to collaborate together in that space. They would have separate instructional areas outside of that office. One of the benefits would be is that sometimes children have a case manager for second and third grade, and then they go to fourth and fifth, and they have a different case manager, so it's a chance for them to collaborate during the day of certain things that they may be seeing going on with the child, and work with that person who's worked with them in the past. So we're looking to have that one area set up for my special ed staff. Then you can kind of see right below there, teacher break room, teacher copy room. You see two of those, and then a teacher paraprofessional substitute coat room. In a nutshell, teacher break room right now it also serves as the teacher's workroom. So you have refrigerators next to photocopiers, next to laminators, next to materials for cutting shapes and letters, and a lot of times those machines also get used by the PTA during the day. So it's we'd like to kind of break that out to afford teachers a little privacy while they have lunch, so they can let their hair down, so to speak. And the idea is to take the copiers out and move those closer to instructional spaces. If you are currently a fifth grade teacher in the portable, you are walking from the portable all the way past the main office and into the second grade wing to make photocopies. So I know it doesn't, it's a bit of a haul to get there. So we're looking to break up those copy machines into two locations within the building. So you have one in one wing of the building, one in the next wing of the building. So it's easier access for that. Right now, for my substitute teachers and paraprofessionals who are in the building but don't necessarily have an office, there's no place for people to hang their coats, put their lunches, that sort of thing. So we are looking for a coat room for that purpose. I mentioned admin file storage, which is also, again, mentioned towards the bottom of page 5. Storage right now is primarily in the conference room in the main office. And is that page 5? Page 6. Page 6 is pretty much standard. We're looking just, it kind of surrounds the storage that we have within the building. You'll see, like, for instance, I had mentioned earlier where my art kiln is. That also serves as PE storage. It also serves as storage for our pallets of paper. It also serves as storage for janitorial supplies as well. So we're trying to get a PE storage area and office. If you kind of cruise through here, janitorial storage is an issue within our building. Not only storage for things that kids use every day, but storage of supplies. We have some storage up in the mezzanine level up there that is been graciously, we've been told by the fire department we can use that area, but ideally that shouldn't be up there. And that consists of, again, PE equipment, consists of some textbooks, extra coats and jackets that we keep for kids on hand in the winter that we bring down on the nurse's office during the colder months. Music room has very limited storage. Once you start putting in drums and keyboards and that sort of thing that are used in the general music class, not just by band, but by the general music teacher. The room that she has right now is very undersized for that. So storage kind of is outlined on there. I just would say that we truly need it. My IT room, which serves as a storage closet and office for the IT person, needs to be bigger. Technology is rapidly expanding, which requires more servers and server racks, and the room that he's in right now is pretty tight. It is maybe a 7 by 10 room, and that includes his desk and server closets, server racks in there. So that'd be something that we're looking for as well. Finally, getting to the last page here, on page 7. We are looking at adding extra bathrooms for the staff. Currently, we have 2 bathrooms available for all my staff. So,
Number of staff.
number of staff well in the upper 90s to low 100. And, teachers are notorious for having large bladders, but, you have to wait a lot of times for it. Yeah, so it would be good to have 2 down in kind of the elementary wing to serve those teachers, and 2 in the the upper elementary wing to serve those teachers as well. All of my primary grades, K through 2, have bathrooms within the rooms themselves right now. Then we have 2 large gang bathrooms at the end of each hallway to serve for the 4th and 5th graders. Portables do have their own bathrooms, so the kids don't have to come all the way in to use the bathroom facilities in the room within the building itself. But if we're pulling that in, they would use the bathrooms that are currently in there. They are all handicap accessible currently.
Those are the only ones that are ADA?
Correct.
The ones in the portables?
Yep. And I think that is it for the elementary school.
So the gang bathrooms are not ADA?
No, they are. They have a stall that is available. Yeah. But right now, a lot of the kids who are wheelchair bound, they'll use the bathroom within the nurse's office, provided that it's available.
You don't have an ADA for your staff, right?
No, we do not have an ADA bathroom for my staff. Correct. Thank you.
So one thing we'll do for this spreadsheet is add the header to every page, because it was kind of hard to follow it, so we'll do that. Any other changes you want us to make on this spreadsheet?
Other than the ones we mentioned going along, there's only a handful.
Yep.
I don't know if anybody else has any questions before we move on. Again, this isn't the last opportunity to ask questions if something should come up. And
The question I had, and I don't know if it's been resolved, when you're looking at the numbers with the existing area and existing needs and new needs, are these additive?
Yes.
Is there some magic when you get to the summary total that says, whether it's a need or it's an existing or not an existing or an add, they are additive across?
So basically, if you go to the last page here, your existing square footage is 65,307. The existing needs are 72,115, plus the new needs of 7,204. And then there's a
There's a
small.
recommendations column that has
Exactly,
a zero.
recommendations of.
Okay, so you're saying the new needs identifies all the things that would be the new classrooms in that category, and the difference between the existing area and existing needs is just either reasoned or standards requirements on
Educational
square footage
needs,
space.
or trying to meet the Department of Education regulations. But in this elementary school one, we have assumed of reusing existing classrooms in getting variances, when we've noted those variances there.
Right, and we're rarely using the one side. So, I mean, like in the elementary school, it just seems to be the existing base building area and total program. It's got the 270, I guess the 276 is only one or two items, isn't it?
Right, correct.
Um,
So we could add a total there if you wanted.
Well, no, and I was just wondering what the recommendations column was as we think through this. Is that you're looking for all this to be yeses and nos and?
Exactly.
Okay.
Really, the point is the two shaded areas are needs. These are definite needs. The question, I think, for this committee to decide is the wants or recommendations. Is that something that we want to incorporate into our program so that when we go back and figure out our options, and this one is fairly small, it's only 276 square feet, so.
It's basically matters of degree. I would say recommendations of things we really, really, really want. Wants are just, we want them, I mean,
Yeah,
so it's tough to.
I know it's been paired, and I'm thinking the long game as well as the needs game. You have to put the building blocks in place so we can all understand. Eventually, it's going to be a question of cost and what the trade-off is of getting, whether it's wants, needs, or we even have to give up on needs depending on what the community is going to say. And so being able to define this in a way that you can change the number and understand what the implications are is, I think, going to be important to think about, because people are going to ask that question very simply, if this turns out to be 100 million, what can I get for 50? If it turns out to be 20, what can I get for 10? And I think we're going to need to be able to respond to that in a way that makes sense to people.
Yep. Absolutely. We realized that from the first version of these, that, as I say, these aren't written in stone. Another way to look at it is a lot of the existing needs, the new needs column, that stuff, that Dr. Joyce, a lot of that stuff is, I'd say the majority of it is what he recommended in his report. And he was pretty conservative about it, admittedly, about that. And then, as I said, it depends on your perspective what other boxes they fall in. And so during the process of our analysis and public input, we're going to ferret out what's a priority, what are people willing to support, and especially in the recommendations, I guess, at wants column, is that probably where that discussion will largely lie.
Right, and I don't know how to build in that discussion, and sorry if I'm taking this up for a point, but it's important to me to be able to feel comfortable myself with it, and I think the prioritization says, how much can you change this? Mike, if I understand correctly, you've said through this process with the principals and the input, we've taken out a lot of the wants that were there before and perhaps moved them out, saying that's just not, all of the stuff from the last 200,000 square foot building is not in here.
Right.
I'm assuming that's true. I wasn't in the details. On the other hand, you look at this and it says, we really need all this, and the wants are, 12 feet. Okay, and everybody's going to say, well, either that's perfectly true or there's needs and there's needs. And so is this the bare minimum, the school board, or is there room for people to discuss this? And I'm just thinking process later on.
Yeah, it's pretty close, Russ, and the philosophy, at least as I had it when we were going through this, is that this isn't an exercise in Yankee trading anymore, right? We're not starting way high, hoping we'll get something a little better, a little less. So my instruction was that this is about what we need. Okay, we've been through this 2 or 3 times as a town. We don't need to do this again, and let's get right to it. There will always be artistic differences, and that's where the recommendations and wants lie, and that's the discussion we need to have as a community. But we tried as best we can, to break it out like that, and so the first 2 columns are pretty essential to the program. The last 2 columns are we hope, are open for discussion.
So basically, as far as.
But I'm sorry, if I may, Mark, even with those last 2 columns, the artistic columns, I call them, we were pretty lean there. We weren't asking for, for crazy things.
So, but as far as the spreadsheet, as far as the elementary school, if all the needs are acknowledged, it'd be an addition of approximately 14,000 square feet?
Actually 20, Mark, because if you get rid of the portables, you see that little
Okay,
asterisk?
yeah.
Yeah, if you look, it's also on the,
20,000.
yeah, roughly 20. If you look on the summary and or the table in the summary page, there's a little asterisk there.
Oh, the summary document.
Yeah, the summary document, I'm sorry. It says, it's closer to 6,000 square feet for the portables.
Like I was
Yeah, it's
thinking,
58, 56.
I was thinking that it might be helpful, and it's just a question, but perhaps it would be helpful to put at the end of this table that just indicated the portables, and what they, the classrooms, and just kind of a cumulative view
Yep.
of the
Great idea.
portables and what's being taken out when you take out the portables, so it doesn't look like this is additional square footage
Right.
above, beyond replacing portables.
Yep.
And we shouldn't shy away maybe from a little bit of narrative, not just a table, but to the extent that there's takeaways that you've done in the summary.
We'll take those.
Some of that could go
Yeah.
right there, I
Brilliant.
think, to, listen, just a readability suggestion. Now that we've spent this much time with it, which is more than I had spent alone, I had gone down through it and read it, but if the headings and the
Yeah.
subtotals
Yeah.
could tie themselves together with
Yeah.
formatting of whatever style,
Right.
it would make it more readable that way.
I think it does on the high school version somehow.
Is it getting there? Okay.
Yeah.
And then, I made a list of some little things that we can talk about that probably, I didn't say them out loud because they may just clutter it. But things that popped out for me that I think will be important for us to communicate, and maybe that's part of the narrative that I'm thinking about. As you go down through these classrooms, if I take the 535 enrollment and I divide by what I counted up as 29 classrooms, it's an 18 and a half students per classroom, which is an important barometer to say that's not out of the park. I mean, we're talking about primary grade, and if we're talking about primary and elementary, if you're looking at K1s and even 2s, 18 and a half or 19 kids in a classroom is a lot, and I think we've really been lucky to have some, in many cases, have our primary grades, our K1s, lower than that. If we could keep them at 16, for instance, we're not necessarily staffing to that level, but we've been trying. If you take across the entire elementary school and say that we're averaging 18 and a half, for me, that's a takeaway that says this isn't out of the park. If this came out to an average of 28, I think we'd be concerned, we want to talk about it. And if it came out at 12, we'd say, well, wait a minute, can we really afford that? But 18 and a half is a nice number, and that will be meaningful to some people that read it. Some won't necessarily connect those, but I think it's another data point we could add in.
One more, just point that, and this goes back to Russ's question, perhaps it would be helpful, with an asterisk or a footnote, to talk about, what these columns mean in terms of new needs and existing needs, just a, kind of a legend, if you will, for those people reading it, and it may just be a sentence or two, or maybe is a couple of
put in there.
sentences that would
Yep.
talk about, that these are high priority versus medium priority, that we went through and prioritized.
No, that's a good idea. We could do a key sort of up at the top, and we did.
The language is in there, yeah.
We do have the language in the summary, so we could just transfer that over, and then that's-
There's a little extra space at the, so you could put a couple of sentences in a little
Yeah, that-
table.
that's
Splurge, add a page. It's all right.
Cheap. So that, actually, it's a good idea. We could put it, I would put it right at the top, because people are gonna see it first. If they have a little key there, boom, and if we're getting really good at this, I suppose we could do sort of an executive summary at the top.
At the top of that, amen.
Some of us are thinking about presentation. I'm also thinking about credibility, and this is not any particular criticism, it's where we are. I need to bring everybody back to the fact that the last time we went through this, it was high school only. And there were a large amount of people who felt the elementary school needed to be paid attention to, and to build a $50 million high school, quote unquote, without even knowing what the cost of an elementary school was effectively hosing the town, okay? It's being able to, okay, whatever. But to get your arms around what are we talking about here? Not doing it in a 3-year step function that ends up putting you and everybody else out of business in the process. So I'm glad we're putting the pieces together. And, you know, I don't know what the picture's gonna be worth 1,000 words. I don't know what the costs are gonna be, but the building blocks are at least being there, and we're trying to get our arms around it, and getting the space, I think, was a great idea to be able to give that potential into the elementary school.
McGrath, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I came away from this saying, I think the elementary school needs more help than the high school the first time I went through it, okay? So from a town credibility, and that may be wrong, but I mean, from a credibility.
You weren't
point of
alone.
view- Okay. We need to sell this to the town, whatever it turns out to be, and bring them through. So I appreciate everybody's comments on how to make this, you know, but that's the end game.
Excellent.
All right. Any other questions on elementary? All right, well, that's the short one.
Thank you, Sean, I'm sure this was a lot of water.
We get a 10-minute
Chris,
break.
Chris, I hope you have plenty of water left.
Yeah.
You want a 10-minute break? Anybody need a break? Real good? Forge ahead?
All right. So let me preface it, when we built these specs, we really built it on 3 different concepts. Safety for students in certain classrooms because of the dynamics of the content that's being taught in the space. Second issue was not having staff have to share classrooms or have to be mobile going to different classrooms, and we see that, you know, quite a bit. I have 13 staff members that either share a classroom or are on a cart throughout the day. And then finally, it's appropriate spaces that will enhance the program that we conduct at the Newmarket Junior Senior High School, not just for today, but in the future, 10, 15 years down the road. So that's a lot of the concepts we built this ed specs around. Page 1 is pretty self-explanatory. There's not a lot of changes to page 1 because that's the current spaces that we have, both at the middle school and at the high school. A couple of highlights is you'll see the science classrooms. Currently, we do not have a lab portion to any of our science classrooms, so doing labs in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science is impossible because of the construction. It's a classroom with science tables in it. There is not the ability to conduct hands-on labs in a safe manner, especially at the 6th grade level. That's 98 kids, so you're talking about 24 kids per class, which is, you know, a significant amount of kids in an 800 square foot, 900 square foot classroom. So that's where you're looking at those science classrooms having the lab space of 1,200 square feet. So you can have a classroom portion and then have a safe lab portion. So again, that meets 2 of our codes, student safety and also enhancing our science program at the middle school. I'll take you down to world language. We have 3 world language teachers and we only have 2 classrooms, and that's for grades 6 through 12.
You're on page 2.
I'm on page 1.
Page 1.
Yep. So that is an added area that we would currently take the traveling Spanish or French teacher, as it is currently, and have them have a dedicated spot, a middle school world language classroom, because that is part of the special that we offer to introduce world language to our kids. Right now, that's a time where middle school kids have to interact with high school kids by going into the high school section of the building to receive instruction. Or the world language teacher has to be on a cart and travel upstairs and downstairs to be able to provide instruction. And people say, well, why is that important? Because if you're a world language teacher, you're bringing different props to classes, and that's a lot to carry around from class to class, upstairs, downstairs. Even though we do have the elevator, that's a lot. So when you want to go and provide an example of what a hat looks like in Spain, not having that on your cart, you've lost that opportunity to give a visual aid to kids. So having their own dedicated space with their own materials is something that we took into thought when we developed this. A new area that we had, and we don't have a middle school science prep area. Where do we prep? So if we have these new spaces for science instruction, we need a prep area that would be shared for the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers. So it's a 200 square foot room for all 3 teachers to be able to mix their materials or set it up in a safe manner. Right now, if we do want to do a lab, we have to ask the chemistry teacher to come down to a 6th grade classroom so we can do a safe lab there, or mix the chemicals up in front of the kids. which again, it does not provide the safest method of doing a lab experiment. So,
Just from your mentioning that there's no lab in the middle, I don't know if that's the same in the high school, that doesn't come out through this. Just looking at the numbers, I don't even see the word lab. I thought it was a very useful point for people understanding you don't need to have, lab space for tests. So you may want to think of incorporating that somewhere in here.
You might break out another row and actually science lab.
Or in the comments.
yeah, I think we put it in the comments because it would be a dual-purpose room. There would be, you'd have 800 square foot or so of classroom space, and then you'd have your lab associated. That's how it is at the high school level. You do have a science classroom section and then a lab that you go to in that whole section off area.
Yeah, no, I think it's, I'm just thinking about people understanding in a way where it's not square footage, it's, you need a lab environment, we don't have those existing.
I think Dr. Joyce does say that in his report.
It is,
but then you
but-
have to go
yeah.
link to the report, so maybe if we could add it just to the comments.
Yeah, I put it in the comment
Yep.
section.
If you think the general public is gonna,
Right. Well, I don't even think, that's why I thought it was important to do a summary document as well. I don't know how many people will dig into this, but maybe they'll watch this, so.
So those are the major changes on page 1, and I don't want to labor through the current spaces we have. So if there's nothing else on page 1, I'd like to go to page 2. Page 2, we start to get into our high school programming, and again, a lot of those spaces are spaces that we currently have. It's just going to existing DOE standards. But there is some added spaces, and it's more science prep spaces. And again, at the high school level, you're doing a lot more hands-on lab, using a lot more chemicals that need to be mixed and stored in a safe manner. Right now, we have one area to do that, and that's in the chemistry lab. We don't have it in a biology lab. We do not have it. We do not have a physics room at all. That's a teacher that's on the cart. So that's, again, you're looking 21st century, that physics classroom is a very important classroom. And then our earth science, where we're doing more earth science, but integrated science through 6, 7, 8, but also in 9th grade, and how our curriculum aligns to be able to do more labs in that classroom as well. So you'll see there is science prep areas. We've asked for 2 in regards to needs and recommended 3 so that each science classroom would have their own science prep area. So they're, again, not shifting materials and instruments from prep area to prep area. Anything on page 2?
Chris, just in terms of looking at the guidelines here, I'm looking at, what is this? 32110K. Is this request based on that particular parameter?
Yep.
Thank you.
Could I say too, the New Hampshire, and I wish Amy was here, but I'll say it again, the New Hampshire state minimum regulations, this is a live free or die state, so they truly are minimum standards. The only one that in our estimation that is a little bit above and beyond is the media center, and because the minimum standards were written in 2006, it was really before libraries, media centers, now they're learning centers, and they're more electronic, less books. So that is one where I think when they redo their standards, they need to take a look at. But that's the only one that we think is really extravagant, if you will.
And I'll take you to page 3. And this is where we start to get in some of the program enhancement. And it starts with having a dedicated space for middle school art. We don't currently have a dedicated space. Our technology education classroom serves as technology education, but also as art. So currently, 6th graders are doing a pottery project. They will start that project in the tech ed room, but then we have to take everything and cart it across the street over to the kiln in the Perkins Agency to be able to fire up all of our pottery for kids. And having a 6th grade daughter, seeing what they do is amazing. The piggy banks they just built out of clay are so lifelike and realistic, and how she does that with the time travel is amazing. But again, having a dedicated spot, so we don't have computers for CAD design mixed with clay for sixth grade art, and then walking through and then having technology education classrooms with your bandsaws and such, all aligned in the same area.
This is where I feel like the committee would benefit from, those who haven't, from actually seeing the school. And I maybe over the next month or so, we can do the day in a school with the committee, just go through it, because one thing I noticed is, I'm a weekend woodworker, and I know how loud tools are and whatnot. And so, the art class as it currently, or art space, I should say, as it currently is separated by, what are those things? It looks like you're entering into a meat locker, these things that hang down to keep out a little air, but not a lot, and you can just brush them aside, and then you're right into the table saws and the planers and the, everything. It's pretty loud.
It is. The cable control room, this is an enhancement of a program, and this is where the support of Chris Williams, but also we were able to hire a library media specialist who just did a presentation to the school board about enhancing our programs and communication, and what better way to do it digitally. So he has background in video and production. So we would like to start being able to promote what we're doing at the school to communicate to parents by having our own video production class as an elective, but being able to broadcast student events. We have a group that is now called the Mules Minute, where they will give us updates every Friday in the cafeteria on the big screen about what's going on in our school and what events are coming up. So really starting a news team, but running it in a more professional manner and giving them the space. So you'll see that for the cable control room, the cable education offices, the storage that Chris has from the funds that we've gotten in working with Channel 13. He has kids that work with him, but again, they have to travel down here after school hours to work with Chris, rather than have a dedicated spot in the education center, which would be our junior, senior high school.
By the way, at the last school board meeting, it's on Channel 13, they had a couple of samples of the work the kids are doing it was absolutely hilarious. I mean, the kids really did a nice job, actually getting news out there, but doing it in a fun way. And they have a TV, a flat screen, right, set up in the lunchroom, so kids can, rather than having to rely on a calendar, they have a running sort of events summary. So.
Broadcast about the new gym floor is going to be in the next newsletter.
Oh, is it?
Also, so you can link,
good.
yep.
So people will get a chance to see it. And it's great work.
Did they interview anybody?
I think
Yes,
Principal
they did.
Andriski is interviewed.
Hey, it was, listen, I don't have any question or I don't have any question or doubt about the potential of that program. And we don't have to answer it tonight, but again, as this is a working document, I just think we should look at and then be able to answer. I understand the function of a control room, and so I guess, but I'm wondering, so the office is maybe an administrative space for those that are working on the educational channel in that effort, the educator, whomever it is, and then a studio where they would actually, this is a green room, maybe to do videotaping, et cetera. The question, I guess, pops, what's the difference between the server and the control room? Wouldn't all the servers be in there? And what are we doing with the office? How much administrative might does this require that we need an additional room for storage? So as we look at those square footage, I'm not suggesting we don't need all those things. We need to do a better job of describing them and making sure that we can spring to that when.
Let me do it while we are on air.
Okay.
The server room would house your network and where your.
For just the cable station?
Just for the cable, but your control room is where the kids would be back putting on the production of the event that's happening.
Okay.
So they're two separate rooms, so.
Filling audio and
Yeah.
camera angles and
Yeah.
feed.
So that'd be a separate room as the production's going on. So
Okay.
the production, the studio, and the production center is different than the control room. Two separate kids, might be two kids that are on the camera being able to talk about the show, and there's two kids in the control panel doing the audio or changing where the camera view is coming from, or cutting in some new videos as they relate to a sporting event. So that they're different spaces, the control room and the server room.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, I'm hearing a suggestion to talk more about that.
Well,
So
and
for-
and maybe in the narratives, yeah, in the descriptive comments over here, we can, communicate that like you just did. That's great, thank you.
And, sort of this is way premature, and this is really in Ingrid's wheelhouse and Brad's wheelhouses, but when I just got to thinking with all this Channel 13 space, I was thinking Perkins, and if we were to bring our classrooms, I don't know, but conversation for another day.
Any other questions on page 3? Page 4, we get into more of the again, the video editing lab. It's another place for kids when they're not on screen to edit the videos before they put them up to the production.
Right.
But one area that we would highlight is, some of the computer labs that we have in our school, looking to eliminate those spaces and not have a computer lab dedicated where kids go to. Rather, use the 21st century education and bring the computers to the kids in current classrooms. So not only do we try to add some space for 21st century education, but eliminate those spaces. The idea that you have to go to a dedicated computer lab to have, technology instruction is not the case. It's more tech integration. Bringing those computers and have that teacher going to a classroom and integrating it as a team or a certain area is much more what you see in regards to 21st century learning. So wanted that highlighted. That's an existing space of room 115.
And I noticed in the elementary school, it was sort of the reverse. You still have a lab there, and I assume that's just, let's get them in an organized
Get them equating,
training
yeah.
first,
They
and
need a
then
more formal setting.
They go through.
Right.
With the increase of technology, we do need dedicated spaces for our mobile computer labs. We're lucky enough, we have 9 mobile computer labs right now that we keep on locked carts, but having those in a dedicated space that, right now we have to house them in teachers' rooms. So the teacher really becomes responsible for those, 20 computers sitting in a locked, mobile lab. And our idea is to put these all in one area, that there's only one key and you sign them out, and it's a better security system for the resources that we're having for student learning. To talk about that in a continued fashion, students that take online classes have to take it in our library. And again, there's other classes coming in, full classes coming in for instruction in our media center is being used more and more as a teaching classroom. So those kids that are taking virtual classes, either through virtual high school or virtual learning academy, they don't have a dedicated spot. So our goal is to give them a dedicated spot, which would be supervised by a teacher, but would be a quiet classroom where they could plug in their headphones and conduct the 10 different classes that might be going on in any given period.
Chris, while we're at it,
Yep.
Virtual High School and Virtual Learning Academy, I just read the JEC report again. It has a good description in there, but what are those in a nutshell?
Yeah, so virtual high school, they're both, you can take them nationwide, but Virtual Learning Academy is right here in Exeter, offers many different classes and curriculums. We use it a lot for credit recovery, for students who have not passed certain parts of class, that they can go back and retake that class so that they're not behind in graduation standards. It's also used for a kid that might have to have a broken leg and might not be able to take PE class, but needs that credit for New Hampshire graduation. So they can go and they can fulfill the competencies of physical education online. So it's an adaptive way to meet the needs of all of our students. Virtual high school is actually an opportunity, and the reason that we are part of a virtual high school setting is because we have a teacher who teaches for virtual high school, which then opens up 24 seats for us each semester, so 50 seats, overall. And she teaches across the country. She has students from China, India, as well as students across the country. So again, and she teaches physics, so that's AP Physics that she's teaching, and that's our current teacher to be part of virtual high school. So those are the 2 different ways that we add to our program of studies by being able to offer more of these classes through these online learning situations.
Chris, can I just ask a clarification? So the virtual classroom is where students actually take kind of consume the virtual learning high school or
Right.
some online learning, whereas the distance learning classroom is where a
Totally
production
different.
facility.
Yeah,
Or a
distant
faculty
learning
member
might
to
be
go
where
run
I
it?
might be able to Skype into
Operating
Cape Elizabeth, you know.
Well, I was going somewhere
Yeah.
much more
Yeah,
glamorous.
so,
Get off
but
my-
anywhere else.
Surgery.
Yeah, but you could go anywhere you want to be able to have classroom experience in a totally different environment where it's virtual, where I'd be able to see an instructor and they'd be able to instruct us. So I have that kid that is so prominent in math, but we tap out at calculus. And there's extra classes they could take. We could have that student tap in and be able to take a class in a different location where they have more teaching staff to be able to do it. So again, providing that needs for all kids, not just in the lower end, but also at the higher end, is what we're trying to produce here.
Hey, the virtual high school classroom is something that we supervise, we don't proctor, is that fair?
We supervise it with the library and media specialists. We do not have a dedicated staff.
So wherever we put that, wherever that room would be located, it wants to be shared or adjacent to something that allows it to be easily supervised? Okay, thank you.
In here, the next item is media library study areas. And I would remind you of what more and more college library and media centers look like. It's not just books and technology, it's areas for kids to go and study as a group. And that's a huge 21st century learning goal. Collaboration, collegiality, working in groups, presentation classrooms. So having small mini rooms inside your library and media center for kids to go and work as groups. So we've added those as another way to enhance what we're doing with our program. The flex classroom, this would be a classroom, say, if your gym floor got flooded. You might be able to hold a class in a designated area that's a large enough space to be able to meet the needs. So again, it's looking to how you might be able to combine spaces. Right now, we do PE both at the middle school and the high school, and sometimes that has to be split. And I might have 8 high school students that are very competitive, and that flex classroom could be used for certain situations where the middle school students could have the whole PE classroom. You wouldn't have to drop the curtain. So again, it's looking at creative ways that you could enhance your program. We put it to say, let's have it next to the cafeteria, so if we have a large meeting and there's overspill, there's the space where you go to. It could become, that's where your seniors can have lunch or a senior type of enrichment. So using that space creatively to enhance what we do, but also give us another large meeting space within our school setting.
When we,
Go ahead, sorry.
when we met with the staff too, they also talked about the wish of being able to do more team teaching, cross-teaching between different disciplines. So this could be a room where they could split off part of their groups and team teach.
Elizabeth, do you have a question?
No, I love the concept of the whole room. I love the seniors being, because they are older, to get away from the cafeteria and be able to have their own space, team teaching. I just love the idea of a flex room. And again, in case your gym floor floods.
Could it be a hedge against a bubble, too?
It definitely could.
Well, and I've just realized too, we didn't stick a flex classroom in the elementary school, so we may want to relook at that because of the bubble issue.
One of the other benefits of the flex classroom concept is special education has its own bubbles in certain years where there are unanticipated special ed needs. So it allows some space flexibility to really accommodate that unforeseen need. And that would translate over into an elementary setting.
You may want to augment that comment, I think, Chris, to reflect these possibilities.
Sure.
Yeah.
Almost a just-in-case room.
The gym was very much on your mind at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions on page 4? All right. Page 5, you see an increase to the music band room. Again, if you've ever been into our band room, you can see the amount of lockers just because of the storage that happens to take up the bulk of the teaching area. And that room duplicates for 3 different teaching spaces. It's general music, band, and also chorus, which we're trying to situate by different classrooms in these ed specs. But as our band continues to grow, the space does not. So next year, you're going to have, I know we'll be up over 60 kids at the middle school band, which, 4 years ago, we were 15, 20. Our high school band is getting up over the 20s where it was in the teens. So again, she's doing such a great job, both orally and also through the music, that our programs are growing, and our space is not to be able to accommodate that. And every time we add another tuba or another saxophone, or that's more equipment that is being brought into that classroom just by the numbers that are coming in. We're asking for a separate chorus room. I cannot teach chorus and band at the same time right now, because they both need the same space. So that limits the amount of scheduling options that we have because of the room and the capabilities for that band room. Because that, as I said before, we want to add a general music classroom because that one room has to service general music, which is grades 6, 7, 8, middle school band, middle school chorus, high school chorus, and I can't offer any electives till next year, where I'll actually have to put them in a classroom because there's such a need. We have 10 kids. We actually had 30 kids, but we're limiting it to 10 that signed up for piano for next year. And I won't be able to offer it in this classroom. I'll have to put it into another classroom because of the needs of our building.
So Chris, can I just ask, just to clarify, so how many, I guess, sections or how many classes of band is taught and how many
Right now,
chorus?
there's only one at each level. There's a high school band and a middle school band. So that's on alternate days. And there's a high school chorus and a middle school chorus that are taught on alternate days. And there's one section of general music for 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade.
And ideally, what would you like to be offering?
Obviously, we'd love to be offering keyboarding in a music room, not in a classroom. I would love to offer pop culture. I'd love to offer a marching band or a jazz band, which we had in the future. But again, we don't have the spaces for this specialized type of curriculum that you see at a middle school and a high school, because you only have one teaching space to accommodate that need.
Thank you.
Yep.
So we're seeing increase in music and instruments in the elementary school and carrying over
Yeah.
into the middle and senior high school.
Correct.
So the arts are growing.
Yes, they are.
Yes, there.
And I think that's a reflection of this town, with the way that it's proceeded for arts and music in this town. Music practice rooms, in these ed specs, we have no place right now. Our band director, when chorus is going on, we have to split that time, 45 minutes. She has to go in the cafeteria to give private lessons. So that's the end of the day. Everyone's walking in, seeing those private lessons. You've got a 6th and 7th grader trying to get lessons. Their attention span at 1:30 in the afternoon is probably not the best. So where a private room would be more acceptable for her to be able to provide lessons to certain groups, but also give a chance for those kids to go to a place in the morning during advisory to practice their craft of music or chorus that would not interfere with other learning. Then the other noted change on page 5 is the addition of a wellness health center. Our health teacher, who teaches 6 through 12, he moves the most out of anybody in the building. He does not have a dedicated spot, and he's teaching some of the most difficult topic areas to kids. So oftentimes he will try, and again, providing with a wellness center, then this now strengthens your PE and your health program, because they'll be able to do a lot more cross-curricular type of activities. You can also bring in your biology and your science classes, as well as your consumer science classes, by having a dedicated spot to have a shared classroom to continue to do these.
Chris, backing up, just the publishing work area, that's for your.
Oh, sorry, yep.
Yeah.
That'd be for our yearbook. We offer it as an elective where they help out with the advisor, but we do not have a dedicated spot, so everything is done basically in our library and then sent off to a company where you could offer yearbook as part of your curriculum, and they could develop it from start to finish with limited support from a major company.
It could be a credit-based class?
Correct, yep. And most high schools, they offer it as part of their English, as an elective, as part of their English class, and they count that towards journalism or call it, a number of such things.
Does that depend on having its own space? In other words, I mean, it's done in the library now, they can't get credit for it, or?
It's very difficult to offer it. You only have 3 or 4 because we don't have a dedicated space to do all of these.
I see.
So kids do it as an independent study,
Yeah.
as an add-on to what they're doing right now. And most of the high schools I've worked at or seen it as part of an elective of English, and they have a dedicated spot, taught by the English teacher because of the amount of writing and that's associated with it.
And we publish a magazine as well, like a small art.
That's done through art.
Okay.
But that space could be used for that as well. So thank you for bringing that up. Yep, they publish that 2 times a year. That's counterclockwise, that's the class. Yep, and that's all student publications, correct. And again, we have to send that out to be able to be the finished product to be printed. We do not have the capabilities to do it in-house.
So we're moving along pretty well here. Does anybody want to have any questions, or we're all good up to this point?
Mike, I just want to say I have, my husband has to go to work at
Sure.
9-ish. And so I will probably have to head out
Okay.
by 8:15 in order to make it there in time. So,
Yep.
and I'm more than happy to come back to any of these meetings. It's been very good. I'd like to see along the progress.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, just know that you can contact me anytime for questions, and I'm more than happy to help answer them. And
Thank you so much for coming over here.
yeah, you're welcome. Is there anything specific you wanted to know tonight, or for now, keep moving along with this, and then I can come back another night?
Yeah, you could come back, and, you know, if this will be recorded, if you ever, just wanted to catch the rest,
Right.
you've caught probably 3/4 of it. And I'll take you up on your offer to come and visit our schools
I
next
would
month.
love to come visit the schools, so,
Yeah,
Great.
great. And I'll hang out for another 15 minutes.
sure, great, thank
And I'm
you.
just gonna sneak out. Thank you.
As we get into the specialized classrooms, you can see that the Perkins building, it's relocating a lot of these areas that we teach in Perkins. That's the major changes on page 5.
Chris, can I just ask you briefly to talk about, so how long has the Perkins building been part of the campus?
This is the first year.
This is the first year. And is that acceptable? Are there problems with that? Are there issues?
I mean, the only problem you have, and we have the best solution, is that your kids leave your building to go to another building. So they're
Across the road.
across the road. Yeah.
It's a firmer portable.
Right, right.
And it was a temporary solution. I mean, it was a necessary temporary solution. Or that was the way I took it when we okayed it.
And it didn't give you the full space you needed. You know, we went from 770, art room space to 911 art room space. So again, we didn't give the full capability of the program that it needed, but it gave them more space and more storage, and provided us with other alternatives to be able to bring in other programming for special needs students. That was required, that carried over from the elementary school into the junior, senior high school. As I start off on page 6, you see reading specialists. They currently share a space. We have 2 reading specialists. And again, they support all students, but most of their work is with those students who really struggle with reading and get extra support through our tiered instruction. So we're looking to give them individual spaces. As Ingrid talked about in the elementary school, they oftentimes are conducting lessons at the same time to our most difficult readers. So again, the attention span is not always the best with that type of student. Giving them a dedicated spot to be able to work more intimately with them and on specific problems would be best for our program. Speech and language, I'd highlight room 224, and Russ talked about this a little bit earlier. Room 224 right now serves as where our speech and language professional is housed, as well as 3 case managers at the middle school, and they are housed through the petitions. So in that large space, I think it's about 1,200 square feet in that room, you have 2 classes, middle school resource classes, and a speech and language teacher all trying to perform their duties at the same time. So at any given period, out of the 4 periods a day, that's who's housed in there. So again, these are students that require specialized instruction, and they don't have a walled-in dedicated space that they need to be provided for that instruction.
Can I just ask one question, Chris?
Yeah.
I see the note for middle school, high school autism, and I know that the DOE has, there are state standards that require that you have to separate students after a certain age range, so I'm guessing that sometimes that needs to be 2 spaces, and that flexibility is built in otherwise here?
Yeah, we use different, based on our period, when kids will enter that classroom, but we also use the collaborative classroom to help out with programming, or we use the multisensory classroom now. That was the old art space to alleviate that problem of kids being the large age gap.
Right, you can't have 6th graders with seniors.
Correct.
From an age.
Yeah, so we've had to solve that through scheduling, is the best way we handle it. That's a good segue, as you see the special education multi-sensory classroom at the end. That is a new classroom, and again, it promoted what happened at the elementary school in regards to specialized space. We are looking for a larger space which would house OT and PT, as well as the growing needs of what's coming up into the junior, senior high school. It's a really neat space that is used by kids.
Can you explain that?
Sure. It's used by students that have multiple disabilities. Right now, it serves for students as a changing area or where they can get private OT, PT services as required by their IEP. But it has a sensory room for some of these students that have eye issues and seeing issues that we were able to create in that space to really enhance that specific program as well. So with students that are coming up, this space will be used more and more frequently with the type of population that is currently at the elementary school that will be coming into the junior, senior high school.
So you're going to have more needs to fulfill, is that what you're
Correct.
saying? You see that coming up?
Correct.
All right.
So we're trying to prepare for the population that's coming up so that we don't have to send them elsewhere to get the appropriate education that they need.
And we're planning ahead, so we're not doing it 6 weeks before.
Correct. Any other questions on page 6?
Yeah, I mean, just a general question. I mean, and maybe, I don't know if Russ asked it before, but how do you prepare for, how do I put it, fluctuations in special education services? That would seem to be quite a challenge. I mean, how do you, I mean, you've got an increased need you see down at the elementary school coming up. I mean, how, not only prepare for that, but in the future, I mean, how, is it flexible rooms, is it?
We have, dedicated spaces, but we do a lot of things intertwined with those different classrooms, so we might call it a cognitive classroom, but it's used for cognitive and students with autism. We might call it a multi-sensory classroom and be able to use that space. Again, it's creative scheduling, but it's also getting the preparation from Sean and the work that happens from the special educators to talk about transitions going forward. We don't look year to year, we look 3 years in advance what's coming up so that we can be well prepared for it. That's the discussions that we have. Hey, this kid is in 3rd grade and this is what you're gonna need as they go into the junior, senior high school. So we're not hitting it with you like Elizabeth said 6 weeks prior and say, what are you gonna do?
I think those trends are not unique to Newmarket. I think
Right.
you can look across the country and see, rising percentages, for example, of students with autism in school systems. And so you can sort of project forward what those needs may look like as students grow older. And I think there are ample sources of some of that data if we kind of look around. So you're sort of forecasting, which is what we do with everything.
Yeah.
But I think you're right that it is about designing kind of flexible space that can be where you
Yep.
can easily sort of shift and regroup, and having flex classrooms for those bubbles, which will happen, is important.
Yeah, just as a follow-up to that as well, and I appreciate the migration. I look at combining sort of pieces of data and saying, we look at the school population, and though everybody has lots of reasons for it, there seems to be a drop-off going from the middle school to the junior to the high school, as we talked about. And I was just wondering, thinking about the specialized ed, where, you said it may be a growing issue today, or at least in one sector of it with autism. How does that pattern through the migration? We have enough, concern in just understanding our own. We had 100 kids, now there's only 40. Where did they go? Who's on first? And I wondered whether the special ed ended up in certain areas either growing as a percentage because people are migrating out, or lowering as a percentage because we no longer can fit their needs and so I didn't know if we had any thought on that. I think of things that it would be useful to implement. Sometimes numbers tell you a lot, and sometimes they tell you very little. But if you don't have them, they tell you nothing. So I sort of bring that up. Is there any?
I mean, right, I mean, the question, when we were looking at the enrollments, the JC report called it a phenomenon where, we're losing kids between the elementary school and the high school, and disproportionately from other towns. I'm sorry, Russ, if I'm saying something different, but I think what he's getting at is,
We can quibble on the words,
yeah,
but
does
the
it?
numbers change.
Yeah, does the same thing happen with special ed from elementary to the junior, senior high? Are we losing people proportionally, or are they all coming over, or mostly, or?
They don't have the opportunity, there's no special ed services at a private school, there's no obligation to provide, and so your identified population sticks. They're here because this is where the support services are, that they are federally mandated to be provided. So
Yep.
you're not going to see them tail off and go, unless, of course, they're part of the population that Sean earlier mentioned, English as a second language, and, you know, they became more fluent with the language, and they kind of tested out and moved on. In some of our special ed cases, there are students who need fewer services over time, but when we're talking about specialized space for specialized services, those are students who probably are going to stick with us right to graduation or 21.
Well, and if you bring up the issue that you're having a larger percentage in the younger population, or the definition of special ed is changing, so it's including more kids with autism, or in that whole discussion today. But I also look at, it's not just parochial school, or it's just not private school. There's homeschooling that's an option, okay? And so you think of all those factors together in the migration, or specialized kids, reaching the point where they go homeschooling for whatever reason, a larger percentage, or should we be building the facility thinking that 20% is going to grow to 30% in the next 5 years, that we can see more clearly? I don't know the answers. I just bring it up to try to surface the information.
Oh, it's a great question, but, I'm not sure that I'm aware of a category that drives or pulls the identified population away from the public school.
But if it's a significant factor,
But if
and I
it's gonna
recognize
grow-
there may not be an answer to it, I'd like to feel, regardless of the decisions we make at the end of this process,
We have the data.
that we don't in 3 years go, holy,
Yeah.
we forgot something.
Right, I hear you saying, are there some trends we can look at? And yes, I'm
Yeah,
sure there's.
I don't want to go through this every 3 years, okay?
Thank
We've
you.
already gone through it 9 with nothing happening. I'd like to sort of say, whatever we're going to do, we feel comfortable in that at least 3 to 5 years, that we're not going to have that,
Have the same conversation, or
oops.
a preventable conversation.
I'm sure both of you have data on
Here, here.
those. Just in terms of the trends within our schools, that's a pretty easy thing to generate.
Yeah, we definitely do.
It is, and again, Dr. Joyce, I think covered some of this in his report, but it's a situation where you try to do your best to predict, but then you're also smart and build in flexibility, and that maybe that's where, when we talk about the, what do we call it, the flex room again, things like that. But I guess the bottom line is, are we comfortable with the data we've seen that this space in the ed specs would satisfy our needs over the long haul?
Yep.
It seems to me like, prudently thought out flex space could save an addition down the road,
Right.
And I'm going to get to that in another area too, in here, when we get to lockers, that can provide that as well.
But if there's an old concept granted, I'm never going to get educated with all the new words in education and flex space, and so when you say flex space, to me, I think of open planning and half walls and that kind of thing, where I can understand that, but if you start to say, gee, we actually need hard walls that are soundproof between the music room, and we can't have 2 competing classrooms going simultaneously in the same space, or special ed needs, walls of some substance, or we need timeout rooms. That use of the word flexible and having walls are inconsistent in my brain. So when you say flexible, I'm building a classroom for 1,200 square feet, but I can put walls inside and to make it 3 classrooms if I need smaller. So that may be just something to explain to idiots such as myself.
This is a mixed issue of architecture and planning. And we saw some of this when we went out, I think some of your schools, Ingrid. You can build walls differently. You can build them out of cinder blocks and they can support the roof, and then you can't take them down. Or, you can build out of various materials where, it's not the best thing, but if you had to open that thing up, you could, so there's, maybe Ingrid, you could speak about that, or maybe I said it.
Yeah, I think you have said it, and just to remain flexible and open, and you do it with furniture, or you just don't know how the space will evolve and what you'll need it for, so flexible.
So you're saying it's the structural integrity walls versus other walls that are...
Correct, yep.
And it's not just the built environment that's flexible, it's literally the label on the room. If you build the room the right size and proportion, it could be used for multiple cross purposes through its lifetime. So as long as you're building it 900 square feet or larger, hey, that could be a classroom, a general classroom. It could also be a collaborative special ed space, or it could be broken up into a suite arrangement for intervention work. Just depends on what the need is over the lifetime of the building.
But it would have a single purpose initially. It wouldn't be used throughout the day as 3 configurations or something like that.
The trick is to keep it as a flex room and not have it gobbled up, so.
By permanent consumption, by
Exactly.
permanent use.
Well, I'm trying to learn. Thank you.
Page 7, any other questions on page 6? Page 7, I've highlighted this again. There's 3 high school case managers we have. Currently, we have 2 case managers sharing a classroom. And again, the instruction they're trying to provide is specialized for those students at the high school level. So there's providing another room for the high school case manager to be able to have their own rooms for instruction for their students. And then you're going to see 2 classrooms that we brought in here. It's called text-to-speech. And this is becoming more and more prominent with students that have difficulties writing. We have applications now where the student can actually talk what they want and the computer will type it out for them. But again, trying to do that in a classroom with 20 kids as noise is going on, the paper does not come out very well as it picks up everything. So having these dedicated spaces where a student could go with support from a teacher or a teaching assistant to be able to get the assistance and then provide the documentation to the teacher that they're learning. So again, it's specialized instruction to help out and assist those students.
And they're only 6-foot by 8-foot rooms, so they're tiny.
And then we talked, Sean highlighted the Zen room. We're looking for 1, and again, this is for pre-interventions for students so that they're not having episodes of behavior and outcry and disrupting large teaching spaces. As Sean described, it's a very neutral room with nothing on the walls, and it's a desk, and teaching materials are brought in to work with the student or students in that room.
But we need a claustrophobia protection.
Get into the core areas.
Like cells.
Cafeteria remains the same, but then we get into the addition of an auditorium. That was built for 300 seats, and discussion of further seats. The reason 300, it would accommodate either your whole middle school or your whole high school if you did an assembly for those specific grade levels. Along with a auditorium, looking at controls for the drama production. Moves us to page 8. The green room is your changing area. Currently, when we do a drama production, so when we just did, the Butler did it, students had to get dressed down in the PE locker rooms or in an adjacent classroom. There's no place to do their makeup or hair. This could all be done in a green room. For set construction, it's often done on top of the stage or in the tech ed classroom and then having to be hauled throughout the entire building to be able to get onto the stage. A set construction, you actually do it, and it's on the back of the stage, so you can bring it right on, and it keeps mess and clutter out of there. Storage, right now drama storage happens over in the Perkins building or in the back of the custodial shed. We don't have a dedicated spot for any of our storage, and we lost even more when we put the elevator in. We used to have storage up above and a catwalk space, but that has been taken away due to the addition of the elevator. Another addition you'll see is a video station for the gym. So when we're broadcasting basketball games or graduation, or town meetings. We would actually have a dedicated booth, so Chris wouldn't have to be stuck in the middle of the bleachers broadcasting our show. So again, not only is it for a school use, it's for a community use when we have large events at the junior, senior high school.
Well, I've said this before at a board meeting, you have these increased classrooms coming. We've had graduating classes of 40, 50, maybe 60.
Right.
But we're getting to 100. We're only gonna have enough seating for the parents.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we're gonna have to do like Exeter and put them in another room with a big screen to watch graduation. We don't have the space.
Or spend more money for a tent outside, or rent another space when you could host it there. So those are your alternatives, correct, for that event. Kitchen changed a little bit, and it's the inside part of the kitchen. Our current kitchen, it's such that it cannot produce a lot of the food. So when we have district events, we have to host it at the elementary school because their kitchen is larger than the junior, senior high school kitchen. And we're talking about bigger students and bigger eaters. So a lot of it is the preparation of the food, where we store it.
So the kitchen is larger in the elementary
Correct.
school, which we're expecting to need to double that space, which is what the recommendation was in the elementary school.
I'm not talking
It's
about
now
the
gonna be
seating
4
area.
times larger than
Yeah, not the
Only,
kitchen itself.
only the preparation area.
Right.
The kitchen, not the dining room.
Right, but the kitchen area itself, right?
So that takes us from any major changes on 8.
The kitchen cold storage to be determined, is that,
Yeah.
is there like just a rough range there, or like?
Well, it's probably gonna fit within the kitchen 2,800 square foot.
I see.
Line item, which is.
should probably just
yeah,
take that out.
Yeah, I think that was an error.
Take that out.
I think so.
It's probably worth mentioning at this juncture that one of the reasons the cafeteria doesn't get bigger is because the kitchen moves its services to the room it's supposed to be in. So the service actually happens in the kitchen area instead of in where the tables are supposed to be.
Okay.
So that's probably an important distinction as to why the kitchen is going to be right-sized under this program.
Yep, thank you.
And it's might be one of those things where, in order to see how it works, the facilities committee does go during the day to see exactly when we say to Russ, when we try to explain how small the kitchen is in the high school, and see how it functions. Then you'll see the difference between the elementary school and the high school.
Just for clarification, does this mean so the service is done in the cafeteria, not most, like I remember my cafeteria service, you actually went into the kitchen through a line and then came out. So it's actually brought in, and is it served on the hot tables or I don't quite understand how.
How we do it currently?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they walk, so not where the seating part is, they actually go into the kitchen where they prepare the food. They're taking it right out of the ovens, putting it in front of them, and putting in, serving it right on their.
So the students are going into the kitchen?
Yes,
There's health code violations that are
that's how,
associated
that's how
with-
we have to serve the food, because we don't have the space to do it.
You're not supposed to have open-toed shoes, anybody with flip-flops, hair nets, all these health code violations are potential.
Little
They're
kitchen.
young and they're strong.
Bring us to page 9.
Because everything's clean at our houses, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that.
Not a lot of changes in page 9. These are all areas that we have. You see the media center, 2,600, but that's about 200 square feet more than what we have. Page 10. Changes to page 10. Right now, we have 3 secretaries that work in the main office, and it's an open concept at the junior, senior high school. One of them is our bookkeeper, who does all the finances for all the different organizations and all of the monies in and out. So she's trying to count money and constantly having people interrupt her because she does not have a dedicated office space. So in this ed spec, we would give her a dedicated space where she could close the door and count monies and be able to do the addition, subtractions as needed. We are looking to eliminate and go to more web storage. And you'll see this in guidance, you'll see this in special ed, and you'll also see this through administration. So having dedicated storage rooms, because we have to store records for up to 7 years, taking it and putting it on the web and storing it virtually. So again, looking to decrease space that sits for storage and can be used for other purposes and stored on the web.
So we should probably get rid of the admin secretary. It's not existing and we're not adding any new.
Yep.
She's currently inside the office
She
proper,
is.
right?
Yep.
And at one point, we were talking about segregating
Yep.
a segregated space for her, and she got folded back in.
We talked about, so what they're talking about is that admin secretary underneath the admin records room. If we do renovation of this building or build new, we would look to relocate one of the administrators from the, having 2 administrators downstairs to having 1 upstairs and 1 downstairs to promote student safety, and having that secretary go upstairs with the other administrators, since we have 3. So that was the discussion that we just had.
Does this plan take into account that the school administration is most of the 3rd floor in this building? Or is that supposed to stay here, or is that being integrated in? Because I thought the superintendent's quarters and staff were going to be taken into consideration one way or the other. I know the town was thinking it may need more space in this building at some point, or at least Steve appears to hunger for it. He doesn't have conference rooms, et cetera. And again, I don't want to have the oops. Oh gee, we forgot, we left the superintendent's office back here, and now the town's saying I need to kick him out. So I'm just throwing that out as, I walk between both places, or I used to, and I'd love to have the communication continue between the town and the school. I know they're separate entities, but that and shared administration support staff has also been an issue that's been brought up and kicked down the road a bit. I don't know where it is these days, but I thought you did that in Port Elizabeth a little bit, right?
We do, yes.
So maybe some other issues that may be useful before we go wholly. Okay.
Yeah, so it's not included in here, but it should be analyzed.
Yeah,
As
well,
part of- yeah.
I don't know, I don't want to waste people's time. On the other hand, since in the, forgetting which committee I serve on these days, the Capital Improvements Committee, we started asking people to think about buildings, and Steve, besides security, was looking at this building as having no conference rooms, having storage space issues, the same that you do in the schools. And that he seemed to hunger for getting additional space in this building, and if the school was going to think about solutions, perhaps it could solve his problem as well. Now, whether those are all real and whether people want to spend them is going to take a dialogue, but, just like we said before, without numbers, you have no answers. Without dialogue, you're never going to make progress. So I don't know if there is, but there was at some point a discussion a couple of years ago, if not recently, in should the school be speaking to the town about some shared services of some kind. So I just throw it out as a thought.
You'll see some added spaces. In athletic director's office right now, our athletic director he's employed as a PE teacher as well, so he doubles that space. But if we do not have a staff member on staff, they do not have a dedicated spot for when they're having all their night contests, within our building, or being able to make phone calls, being able to work with coaches, and be able to have referees, a place for them to work with. So that's an addition. A career center, again, that just goes in with what we do with students regards to their job shadows and work studies, to the transition coordinator, but also the guidance services that we offer. And then we included a dedicated space for the 4 major core department chairs, so that they'd have an small office space while they're ordering supplies, being able to work on curriculum that's not in their classroom. It's a dedicated spot to be able to go and do that work.
Where do they do that now, and what's the problem
In their
with it?
classroom or in the teacher's room, which is shared by every teacher.
Okay.
There's not a dedicated spot for them to do it.
How much time roughly would a department head need for a space like that? I mean, how much are they?
Again, it's before or after school, because they'll be teaching, so they
Yep.
do their department chair work after school hours,
Mhm.
or when they have their free period. But again, if they're sharing a classroom, they can't do it during that period, but that's when they order their supplies. It might be when we're reviewing or revising curriculum. They serve as part of the interview committee, so they might be setting up interviews or working with the administration when we're doing the interviews. So again, getting that dedicated spot for the advanced work that we ask for them.
Interviewing new staff.
New staff,
Yep,
correct.
okay.
Anything else on page 10? Sure, sure.
You can sit right here if you'd like, you know. Actually, you good?
Page 11, the biggest area that I want to talk about is the large team boys room, small team rooms for both the boys and girls. Currently, what we have is you have a PE changing area off of the gym. So our current teams, if we have a boys and girls varsity game, our boys and girls team have to change in that locker room, but then we have to provide a space for the visiting teams to come into. So oftentimes, the boys' visiting team will go in the girls' locker room, and then the girls will go into the boys' locker room for a visiting team. So that obviously takes a lot of time away from the game, but also storage of your equipment. So in this plan, what we're proposing is a dedicated spot where our kids could store their stuff through different seasons, and the coaches could be able to access that room during games, so that we're not interfering with other teams that are coming in. Other teams would have a small room, and then we're not interfering with the PE classes that are going on, because you're leaving stuff out or things are happening after school hours. So that's why that addition is there, and that's pretty frequent in most high schools, that you have dedicated spots for your visiting teams and your own home teams that's separate from PE for storage over long seasons. That's about the biggest change on this page. Is there anything else that you'd like me to highlight on page 11?
When you're talking about the storage, though, you're talking about needing to, is this like seasonal storage, as you mentioned, that
Yeah.
you just put this equipment away for 3 months and you don't have to go
It would
back and
switch
forth?
different ones, so it's for uniforms. Again, with the addition of the elevator, we lost uniform storage, so right now we're storing it in our athletic director's offices or in the side of PE rooms, so.
Right, but would this have to be on site to the sake of argument of saying, gee, we're going to access this room once a day or once every 5 days, or we're going to store this for 3 months? Because I just think of the rec space that we have in the town nearby with the fields and everything like that they do have storage space. They have a rec building. I don't know if that's being fully utilized or not. There may be some off-site storage that's available that if
We
it
have
doesn't
asked
have
that
to-
for baseball and softball, about storing stuff there. I have not gotten an answer back yet, but that would be very helpful.
I
for
wish I could
equipment.
go magically get you the
But
answer.
for soccer and basketball, you want that on-site.
Gotcha.
You know, and again, that's your uniforms and your equipment, but it also, right now, that would store all of your athletic training supplies, which we are responsible to provide, even though Access comes in and provides our athletic training services, so your tape, your gauze, your Band-Aids, specific to sports.
The weight room, Chris, adding 400 square feet potentially to that.
Yeah.
What's the reasoning?
Again, appropriate space, we'd look at it as a laboratory that we do for science, so safety, student safety, and having the enough equipment in there, so you'd have a couple different spots to be able to do bench pressing, which is separate from being able to do cardio exercises. But it's also, that's where we have, the elevator access room is in our weight room, which takes up that space, so
yeah.
we lost space.
That ramp.
I see.
Yeah.
Might want to add that to the comment. Doesn't jump out, but I might be getting a little afield here, but Meredith, I've seen so many schools now, I don't know if it was yours at Cape Elizabeth that has a community access potential that they can use the facilities, or how does
Yeah,
that work?
So we have a fitness center within our school.
Yeah.
And right now, the recreation department is overseen by the school department, which is another whole
Mhm.
layer. But the facility is within the high school, and so it is used at times by patrons, but also has supervision for class access or after-school use for teams for different purposes.
But can members of the community use it?
Yeah, they pay a membership fee.
Okay.
To use it, and then we have a key card access system, so that once you've paid your fee, you can access the facility and you sort of swipe your card when you come in.
Is that popular? Does it work out well, or do they?
Yeah, I mean, our space
Yeah.
is undersized,
Yeah.
which has presented some challenges, but yes, it is highly used, particularly by the seniors in our community. That saves them, it's the convenience of not having to travel to, 10 or 15 minutes to a neighboring community to access the facility.
That physics science office, you had indicated earlier that you didn't have one, so this is a want.
Yes.
Here to get that physics office.
Correct.
Okay.
Anything else on page 11? Page 12. I'd like to highlight the addition of a school store. We don't currently have a school store. And I would say that, Newmarket is full of pride, but being able to teach the kids, your math skills and marketing skills, which we supplement with Seco School of Technology, but, we always get the parent, hey, where can I get that hat? You can get it at our school store. We do it virtually right now through Collins Sports Center, but we don't have anything in-house that can be run by the students.
And it's only certain times of the year that we can get that.
We do it three different times for that online store, correct. But again, that's apparel, but it could be school supplies that we could sell out of there. Most middle schools do that as fundraising and
And it'd
do
be
this
nice to
themselves.
continue that from the elementary school up to the junior, senior high.
Mhm.
But just to have pencils.
They have something.
I don't know about anybody else's teenager, but pencils disappear.
Where do they go?
I don't know.
It's like they eat them. I never see them sharpened. Where'd they go? I used them. She admitted the other day, or I left them somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're getting there. We left them somewhere.
Oh, I moved, I found them all.
Psychologist?
They went to the
Psychologist in the building?
Yes, we do.
Probably found a lot of stuff.
I've talked about the small team rooms for visiting teams when they come to our facilities. We talked about a teacher team room at the middle school level. Again, a place for them to work where they could do cross-grade level work, which we do not currently have, and that's a want.
Right now, they come to the SAU when they do things like that.
Correct, yeah. Or they go into, the main office and use the conference room if we're not having meetings. Not many other changes in regards to page 12. If there's something that jumps out, please feel free to ask. I'll turn us to page 13. Again, now we're getting into a lot of just the storage or data. And again, not a lot of major changes. You'll see we do want some place to store tables and chairs. If you ever come into our cafeteria, they're all stored up against the side. Again, so it takes away from your meeting space that you have. Other than that, there's just some changes to IT as our demands for the amount of technology that we use. And upgrades, we've talked about upgrades for security and how that would change what your IT data room would look like. So again, as you're looking towards 21st century, you're using more and more data. So that's an increased need.
So down on that, Chris, you have IT data and then IT data room.
Yep.
Is there a word missing there? Are they one and the same, or are they different?
It's probably no. So there should be one it's a workroom for them.
Okay.
Which is probably the two
Yeah.
bigger one.
200.
Yeah.
And the data room would be where they're actually having
Server.
it, yep.
So, I'm just wondering, just for for ease of understanding, those first two entries, are they correct? I mean, and what are they? IT data and IT data room?
Yep, they have room numbers.
Okay.
So
They have different functions?
IT data is a workroom?
There's a,
That's where we have,
200.
both of our tech,
there's a workroom down
there's a
here.
tech director and his assistant work in that room as well. So that's where their offices are stored.
But then if you go down below that, there's an IT workroom.
Yep.
Is that,
So they don't,
different.
they don't have their own office space. Their office space and workspace is all together in that room 119.
okay. So we're separating
Yeah,
their
that-
office space from their
And
workspace?
actually, if you look at 223, that's a small data room that's upstairs.
So what do they, this is what I don't know, just they have a lot of repair work on what, laptops or?
That or our Chrome cards or setting them up. Anytime we have
gotcha.
to do our smarter balance testing, that's where you'll bring in, make sure all of
Okay.
our computers are working right.
The
You've got a-
imaging machines.
Imaging, you've got 90 staff members in my building that all have laptops, you
Yep.
know, so.
Okay, I got it.
And they work with the kids' stuff too.
Not as much, they'll do it for Google Classroom,
Okay.
but
that's
if
it.
you come in and say, can you look at my laptop? We don't service that laptop because we don't issue that laptop, so that's part of it. Anything else on page
The
13?
custodial storage,
Mhm.
is that an increased want of an additional 250 feet, or is that just an additional 58 square feet over the 192?
Additional 58, correct, Ingrid?
Additional, correct.
So
Well, sorry, are you on janitorial custodial storage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Upstairs?
So basically, we're saying that you have it in this room, but you have custodial storage elsewhere too. That is a want for the second floor,
An additional 250 feet?
correct.
And then,
But we have it in the wants section.
Yeah, no, I see that.
Oh, I
what
get
would
it.
you do with the 192 though? Does that go to something else, or is that freed up? It says, so the existing area
Right.
of room 216 is 192.
Right.
Is that on the, that's the second floor, I presume, because it's 200. But, so you just need, like, I think Skip was saying, you need about 58 more square.
58 more, because if you went from existing area to existing needs, you just, it's usually bumped up to what the total wants to be, but this, you know, I was saying they want another 250 feet, or is it 58
Or do you
feet?
want a 58 feet?
Yeah, it's 58 more.
Yeah,
Okay.
Just a quick question about the comment, the very last comment on page 13. So it says, by moving the lockers out of the hallway, we increase, so this is, this language is specific to a reno.
Correct.
Or you build
yeah.
new. I would, if you build new, we'd make the recommendation that you have no lockers in the hallways and you have pods at the end of each hallway.
Right.
And that was what I was talking about with Skip earlier. We build them at 900 square feet because you could take that pod, if you do have it overgrowth, and it becomes a classroom. So you take the lockers out and you actually have the capacity to put the walls up and build a classroom.
As long as we design it that way.
Correct.
Right.
So as we,
do.
as we're sitting here and talking about these things, it's, Skip, Mark, and I, and had the benefit of seeing a whole bunch of schools where these things were incorporated. I think it may make sense, I'll just throw the idea out there, Ingrid, for maybe for us, if time allows us, to get back to Hanover, Stevens, and Lebanon. They're all right up near each other, and they display all these things. One's a brand-new school, one's a sort of a economical renovation, and one's near Dartmouth is a more thorough renovation. That might make sense if people are interested to get up and actually see some of these things, because like, if you were to sit here and explain to me what a locker pod is, I wouldn't know, but having seen a nice one over at Keene, I understand the concept. Like, it was almost like an area, I had the feeling of Starbucks. They had little kiosks where the kids could hang out near the lockers with their laptops and
They're low levels. You
Yeah.
can put your computer on top.
it's not in the middle.
Converse over, and
It's
you're off to the side.
it's off the corridor, so you're not running into each other. The lockers are there, and all the classrooms are around it, so you don't have to walk a mile to get to your next class. English is here, math is here, you know, boom, boom, boom. But that's, I think that's what you're kind of describing here, is just have
It's
the lot.
exactly what we're describing. I mean,
Yeah.
you can even just go down the road to
I was
Oyster
gonna
River.
say, we don't have to go all the way up to Lebanon, although that's wonderful work, Banwell, there's a lot right here.
See it a lot.
Right in our backyard.
And we do it both at the high school
Saves
gets
the
to
road.
1,000 square feet because you'd have less of, you'd have 2 grade levels being in that area. But we had 3 at 900 because that would incorporate 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So that could also be a large meeting space for those grade levels during that passing time or advisory time. We do 8th grade team meetings, and we bring in all 80 kids into a classroom during advisory time as they're talking about their Philadelphia trip coming up. But you could do this as a team time in that general meeting space, which is a large enough space where kids could sit because of the height of the lockers, to be able to see everybody. So,
Just for follow-up, is that, I mean, I'm just kind of intrigued by this, and this is off topic here, but at the same time with the pods. So are the classrooms kind of in a circular arrangement? Like, it kind of looks like a.
It can be a
sounds-
square, too.
It can be a square.
Yeah.
But the pod is in the middle, and then the classrooms are on the
Right.
perimeter. And so rather than long hallways of kind of like vertical and horizontal space,
Exactly.
it's doing something. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And then, you don't have people running through you, when classes change over. You're
Across the hall,
off. Yeah.
pretty much all the time.
And the other thing you see on the ground is, that I never even thought of before I got into this, is like gradations of materials. You put your best flooring up front where it's gonna get hit,
Right.
and you put your less expensive flooring, I never even thought of those things before I got into this, so, other things too, so it might be worthwhile to give
Field
people.
trip.
Field trip.
I think the only other couple things that we talked about is the PE storage for uniforms, and again, we lost that space with the elevator going up. Anything else on 14? And then when we get into 15, that's storage. A lot of it, what we did is not to have these little spaces of 15, square feet of storage. It would be built right into a classroom, however we would find it in a renovation or build new. And then the increase for toilets. There is only one toilet, or there is one bathroom upstairs for boys and girls, one bathroom downstairs for boys and girls. And there is one teacher's bathroom upstairs, one teacher's bathroom downstairs, and then one bathroom in the main office. That's all we have for staff. So that's why you see the increase of toilets based on the number of students.
This gives me deja vu to my childhood. I had 3 older sisters and an older brother in one bathroom. Wasn't a tough
So
place
you
to
had
be.
one of these
Yeah.
toilet collaborative.
I was right there with you, Mike.
I know that-
5 of us, one bathroom, plus mother and father.
Been like that here in the town.
You had to
offices.
strategically drink your
Outside.
water. Yeah, you had to
Boys went
time
outside.
it.
It's your meeting, but I know it's getting late when toilet collaborative made me jump.
So everybody can see why I had a joint meeting, maybe why I didn't want to go through this twice, but although the
Exactly.
presentations have been great.
They've been great,
but
absolutely.
The questions have,
Couple of
yeah,
questions.
yeah.
One is, we haven't hit on this big space user called miscellaneous circulation wall thickness and voids, which seems to take about 20% of the space. So could you explain that in a way?
So that, we have a net square footage of all of the program spaces, and then we have a gross square footage of the perimeter of the entire building.
So you're talking effectively usable square footage
Exactly.
versus?
Versus circulation, stairs, wall thicknesses, et cetera.
Okay, that just may use a better slight explanation. And I don't mean to be Debbie Downer, but I'd like to walk the dark side as well as the light side. Many schools in the past, okay, we have still a fairly sized, small school, I think comparatively to most of the schools in the region. I applaud the fact that we're still trying to provide a full program, including drama and band and chorus and everything like that. But I think we've all seen those programs being cut back in larger schools, much less smaller schools, as the voters have said, this is what we can afford, et cetera. I'm not suggesting that here, but I'm suggesting that based both on our size, and this seems to be a fairly complete curriculum. I'm sure we can take it much further, but we still seem to have many of the arts and what people may call more electives. I think we should think about what happens if you limit some of those programs. What does that do? We still have an attached cost. We haven't add Reno to new. It's a building block to get there, but at some point, people are going to ask the question, okay? And I'm not sure the answer of, sorry, I'm not listening, or no, I can't think about that, or I don't have what the number is.
We've done it.
Okay,
We
and
got
that's
rid of
great.
our jazz, we got rid of music, and now we're seeing it come back, because it is necessary. Math and music go together.
I'm not suggesting,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to, I'm just saying to be prepared, because the issue here in the final analysis is what does the town vote for?
I think
Okay.
your breakout does address that, and that you've got needs, and some of those things are listed as recommendations and wants, right?
Yeah.
For example, the production studio is listed as a recommendation, but it's not incorporated into the needs, so as you cost that out, you'll know what the pluses and
Right, and I'm
minuses
not saying don't shoot for the moon and being able to put the presentation, but at some point, somebody's gonna say, gee, if we don't do drama, and we don't have an auditorium, or we don't have this program, what does that do to the whole cost configuration?
And I think design-wise, too, we have to ebb and flow. We need to start with this foundation, design a conceptual plan, price it out, weigh that, go to the public, see what they think, and there may be certain pieces that we carve off and price separately, like the auditorium or a larger gym with bleachers at the elementary school, and we price those as ad alternates.
Absolutely.
It's just like
And
buying a car, and you have your list of options, and you get a price for them. And it's really no
And
different.
people will see the value or not the value in that,
Right.
and how many recommendations you come out with at the end of this. But I just want it to be as complete as possible now that we have the professionals involved, so that we have the answers to those questions, and don't look like, we hadn't even thought about them.
Well, and I'd say that we've been at this a long time now, many years, and over those years, there's been changes in the makeup of the community, and the people that live here, and the people that send their children to school here. And I think we're seeing some of those changes evolve over a period of time, and we need to pay attention to that.
So, any other questions on the junior, senior high version?
The only other thing I might suggest, and I don't know whether, but the Perkins Art Building, you may want to, as my suggestion with the portables, maybe it's not as relevant as with the portables, but just, indicate what's there and what, if that building isn't incorporated, what needs, it looks like, there's 9/11, but it doesn't, well, I guess it does. I guess it,
We pull all that programmer into the new spaces
okay.
in here.
So, in terms of process, I think the next step with these ed specs is I'm going to propose that we put them on the agenda for the next school board meeting to review and possibly approve. And when we say approve, whatever the final version is with changes and stuff, it doesn't mean, again, that that's written in stone. These things, as we've just discussed, will be further vetted through a public process and through a design process. And I think they'll probably look different in the end, but you need to start somewhere.
I think one of the things that was mentioned was priorities. Now, I don't know if it's best for the school board or whatever to set the priorities. It's certainly, I feel uncomfortable setting the priorities as the school facilities committee. But if there's some way to prioritize some of the space, I think we talked about before, maybe it's getting at the same thing as drama versus an auditorium versus a science lab versus this. Is there a relativity, or is everything going to be, it's all priority? We stripped out everything, as you suggested in the summary. The space is down 50,000 square feet from where it was 3 years ago. Maybe that's worth an explanation. Again, I'm thinking of educating people as to what's changed and what options. But I can't think everything here is the same priority. I understand for each duchy, it's incredibly important. But somewhere we're sort of paid at the macro level to be able to say this is a bigger priority than that. And I think we should think about that.
Well, and just so I'm clear on what you're saying, what I understand these columns to be is just that. These are sort of weighted priorities, like if you had to go across and you said, out of 100%, what do you really need? Like the first existing needs is that's 95, 100%. New needs is in the same category, and then when you move over to recommendations, maybe that's 80%, and then wants is a 50-50. I don't know, whatever that was the idea with this, is these were the priorities, but are you saying that they should be?
Well, I don't know. I'd rather ask the questions now than be the person who sort of picks apart or says, here are questions that we never, I don't read things personally for what they say, I read for what they don't say. Okay, so what is the writer left out of not choosing to analyze or bring to the surface of something because it just didn't go along with everything else? And so people are going to ask at some point, is a bathroom on the third floor an equal priority to a science lab? And somewhere in there, you may or may not make trade-offs. If there are no priorities and everything here is of equal priority in the needs column, as you say, then that's fine. You've already made that decision.
I see what you mean, so like within a column prior.
Yeah, or with, is it important to have the 6,000 feet over 9 items in this group? Or would you say, gee, if I had to say, take it down by 10%, what are the 2 or 3 items in this list that you may say are slightly less necessary?
I got you.
I don't know, it's just
And
general
it may be
questions.
that it's
that people
about
ask.
sort of life safety code, DOE regulations, programmatic decisions, and they're blended. And I think it's hard to separate those out.
I was just gonna say, there's a bigger conversation, not a bigger, but there's a conversation here that the board has to reckon with, and maybe I should say quickly, because some of what might, for some people, be a judgment call of what's the priority, even in the existing needs and the new needs, goes back to, do you want to have a cable studio? That's a program that we're talking, that we've already begun to do, the kids are doing it, and so there's space broken out here, and it's in the needs column. Somebody may say, just like some period back, what Russ was talking about, music, or in some schools, elements of the music program have, or the arts have suffered. It's a programmatic decision that we have that program. If we don't have that program, we may not need that space. If we're not going to have, Exeter High School built that building and didn't put any culinary arts in it. No kitchens, no cooking, no scrambled eggs, no muffins, none of that. You want that, go to SST and do culinary arts. They were less than 2 years in, and they were putting in kitchen space because kids didn't want to go major in culinary arts, but they did want to learn some life skills in terms of working in the kitchen and working with consumer science, family and consumer science. That was a programmatic decision that they thought they'd made, but maybe they didn't. We got to make sure that there are program decisions that are solidly set, because that answers some of the question, is that a priority or not? And this has been my concern or question about when do we know that this is done? I mean, right now, we're based on the program that we have and the programs that we're running and continuing those things and continuing with virtual high school. If you're not going to do virtual high school, tell the kid to go home. You don't need a classroom for that. Well, we certainly don't want to say that. It's a great program, and it broadens the horizons for all of our students that might access that. So I think that's the other thing the board's got to consider, is if there's any programmatic question built into these ed specs, we got to confront that before the whole process moves forward. And that means it can't wait until November. That's something we got to reconcile.
Or if there's a limited amount of money.
Right.
I'm trying to bring up issues we've all talked about one way or the other.
Because we're going to answer these
before.
questions again eventually.
We're into the details. This is wonderful, and I think it's a great job of people going through this. But we're still going to have to answer the voters' questions at some point in time about where's the flexibility, how do the numbers change, this is too high. If you get by with 80% of it, what do you do, type of thing.
If I may, I was just sitting here thinking that maybe, and I really like kind of the executive summary approach, Mike, that you put together, but it might also behoove us to sit down and do a small narrative about different sections and different needs. so that people, they can go back and listen to this again and again, but sometimes it's nice to have black and white in front and think about those things. I just, at UNH in my department, we just did a 10-year self-study looking at our particular program, and we were looking at trends in majors, undergraduate majors in College of Liberal Arts, and actually communications has stolen a ton of our majors, and it's the largest growing major out there, and it's not only the largest growing major, it's the largest growing industry, and it's attracting students because there are lots and lots of jobs out there. And so, that just a little bulleted point, and I can give you some documentation about that, so that and when we talk about programmatic, it's not just because it's fun, but and there is a cost to this, and one would have to make these decisions, but an informed decision would say, well, interestingly enough, this is one of the largest growing industries within the American economy right now, and so this creates a solid foundation for vocation for these students, rather than just being something that would be fun to engage in. But anyways, so I don't know if you've done a ton of work, and I'd be happy to help on that, but maybe kind of a bulleted point, per section, just a couple of points about particular key things that you could discuss. And some of that is in the comments, but some of it there's a backstory that might deserve a little bit more elaboration.
Political race this year has increased the amount of communication.
So maybe Brad and Ingrid, you could just, I think Ingrid, you just talked about it a little bit, but just talk about, you've been through this process 100 times.
Yes.
And we've been through it 3 or 4 as a town. So what's the typical flow from now?
So from now,
We got
you
these-
guys have a schedule, and this is a draft schedule. Is this what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, we want to actually work backwards from the bond vote, because we need to assure that you guys have enough time with whatever final option we end up with whatever final cost that we get for that option. You have enough time to educate the public. So we really want to be done with everything no later than the middle of November by the latest. 1st of November would be even better. So we are here in April, and program is what we're just doing now. So the school board will hopefully review and accept and approve the proposed program. Then we will jump into, and from doing the elevator project, we know a lot about your school already, but we need to come down here and verify existing conditions. We have your plans, etc. We'll also, for May and June, start the options development of looking at all different options, renovation, new school, elementary options, and site issues, and all of those pieces. We really need to start to do that and end that before the teachers and staff leave for the summer. So we like to actually go in and do school presentations to both schools so to get their input as we're doing these options. We would also build upon your past reports of MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and structural reviews, so we can nail down the seismic issue for the renovation and all of that in May. Then, at some point, we're recommending the first public forum, probably sometime in the summer, hopefully catching people before they go away on vacation in August.
What does that look like, Ingrid? How does that forum work? What are we talking about? How does
So basically, we'll have, I'm assuming, 3 options for the junior high school and maybe 2 options for the elementary school. And we'll have vetted that out with this group, and we would bring those options and present them to the public. You'd announce it. We could do a one-night meeting or a Saturday meeting typically. And it's really about us sitting there presenting what we've done to date, but it's really about hearing from the public on what they like, what they don't, what else should we look at, so that we can start that dialogue. And then sometimes we are lucky and get 1-star option for each school, and we develop that 1-star. Sometimes we still have 2. So it may be 1, it may be 2 options that we continue to look at in more depth. So that is half of July, August, September, and October. Again, we'd have a staff review as part of that. We would like to meet with the local, Mike Hoffman in the fire department. We'd meet with Amy at the DOE to make sure whatever those options are, we get their input before we finalize them. And then, we would also, early on in this process, we'd like to talk to the committee about construction delivery methods. Do we want to hire a construction manager, or do we want to do it traditional design, bid, and bill? If we do select a construction manager method, we would want to get them on early, because they would do all of the estimating, and they would provide a guaranteed maximum price for your bond vote. So we would have, these are the estimating bars. After we do the options, they or a cost estimator would cost out these options. So when we go to that public forum, we have some instance of what they cost. And then at the end of this preferred option development, we have an estimate that you'll bring, and that will be your bond vote estimate. And then bond vote prep, we have, after we've gotten the cost, a budget review. In January, we issue the warrant and get the wording correct. In February, we have the bond hearing, and then March, the bond vote. So that's kind of the big picture draft schedule, and we can modify it as we
The asterisk appears for the public forum, looks like the first week or two of July, and I feel like in terms of the entire community is probably not around in the first.
It's true. So we could have it earlier. We could have it as we're developing the options, if we wanted to. And we should also have a public forum after we have the preferred option, so to explain that too, sometime in November.
Is it more effective to have the first public forum when you have the costs? And I mean, this goes back, I think, to a little about Russ and have them broken out, or I mean, what's your?
There's two ways of thinking on that. I mean, some ways it's better to not have cost with all the options, because then they look at the values of the options. But in some instances, they really need that to weigh the different options too. So it's really, as we get through the process, the committee can let us know how you want to proceed. But I agree, July, I mean, how many people are you going to get? So we should probably move that up.
I think that last week of June.
But if there's a way to make this a two or
Yeah.
three-step process, you know, it would, I know the school board's talked about their communication vehicle, and how do you bring the public along so it's not a simply binary, I haven't spoken to you, oh gee, here's everything. Absorb it and make a decision. And I think the thought that's going into this, and from where we've come before, is a story in itself with the focus, and it's including the elementary school, and here are some of the, the executive summary challenges. So if it's getting a dialogue on passing that information out and getting people to speak about the major issues that are facing these schools so they know it, and then see the next step, just like the facilities committee and the school board will see, of here, that's translated into this next step of here are options and here is building space. That may be a better approach, it may not be, but sort of the timing would be, it would be nice at the end of May or in the middle of June to be able to have something to get the public primed with a delivery date in the future.
And maybe open houses to see the existing conditions we can plan in there. Has a website been set up yet? So as we go through this process, we can upload meeting
communications
notes, photos.
plan.
Perfect, yeah.
Yeah, we do have a site up, so.
Great.
Yep.
Just for our viewers, remind them, it's a website, right?
Yeah, it's on the, if you go to the SAU page, there's a facilities subpage, and it has all sorts of stuff up there already. Documents from these meetings.
Right.
Well, the public forum, the word dialogue was used, and that's, you can't underemphasize that word. So part of the dialogue, it's a multi-channel dialogue, so it's good to have a website, so now it's time to raise its profile so people find it easier. And that's a multi-channel communication, whether it's through the students to their parents or to
Postcard
through the town
mailers,
websites or
town
whatever.
website.
So that as you travel through this process and materials continue to be developed, that's all been exposed to your constituency, so they feel and can be part of the overall process. And the public forum is just like that as well. Ideas come from public meetings that we don't all think of in this room. I mean, as good as we like to think we are, it's kind of, it's fun and surprising. Sometimes you get some terrific ideas from, the guy down the street who does something completely different for a living, but, there's some amazing insight that can come out of those meetings. So, and it all comes from the dialogue and the transparency.
I think Russ's point was a good one, and I thought of it too when I first saw the sort of the one asterisk for the public session. I think you can't make people eat too much at once.
Right.
And maybe we need to think about.
Right,
having-
periodic.
Well, that, and if you ask for their input, as you said, maybe something will come out that will directionally change and give you another alternative. And people, again, psychologically may feel they're engaged in the process because they've had some input before it got 7 steps down the road, and you got 2 options, A or B, and somebody says, what about C?
So maybe what we do is we have one in early June when we're developing the options. And then we have one, everyone hates to have it in early September because that's when kids come back to school. So maybe in the end of September and then the end of November. So they're spaced out and we're soliciting that info. And I think too, because we're in neighborhoods, we really need to have dedicated neighborhood meetings for the neighbors.
What do you mean by that, Ingrid? Just what you said? I mean,
Yeah,
like.
basically cider and
I
cookies
gotcha.
and invite
Building
them in,
committee
hear
and
their
school board members.
concerns.
Right, here
Exactly,
we go.
right.
Gotcha.
Means Ingrid's coming to our block party, Mike.
Grassroots effort.
I think we talked about percentages before, but if only 25-30% of the town has either kids in the school system or is involved in supporting the school system as a teacher or as whatever, there's still 70% of the town that you don't want to go back into here's this core group who's very vocal, and if you don't like the way we think, see you later. So you're going to have to figure out a way to reach out and engage the rest of the people in the process. That's probably one of the reasons I'm here.
Bless you. Thank you. How would you do that, Russ? I mean, because there's always going
I may
to
not
be.
have the solutions. I'll let you know if I do, but I'm thinking of the end game, and the end game is getting something useful done for the school that doesn't put the town at risk, okay? And that's where I'd like to come out of this, because the town's got lots of issues to deal with. This is one of them. It hasn't worked for 9 years. It sucked the energy out of this town several times, and I'd just like it to be successful, whatever that turns out to be this time around. And I think we have the opportunity.
I think we're working to widen the net outside of the public forums and things in terms of school board representatives going out to meet with different townspeople to talk about these things. So again, it's another opportunity for communication and information.
I wish I had the answer, but I just bring it up.
One thing, and I don't want to keep everybody, because we've been here a long time, is one thing, once we start moving forward, and the facilities committee meetings will pick up, that we dedicate a group of people whose sole task it is to think about these things and to execute them. Going forward, think of a communication strategy. It's almost as important as the substance. The substance is kind of easy to me. It's the making sure you get people involved that I find challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can develop a communications plan, and it's not one method, it's multiple, and it includes face-to-face meetings and block parties and mailings and website. It might include some telephone polling, and there are resources to enlist for some support with that, but to make sure, have you heard about this? Uh-oh. If we find out that, on August 1st, that 70% of the town says, what are you talking about? What do you mean there were 3 forums already? You got a lot of work to do.
And being realistic and understanding my experience here, like when I first got here and they had the golf course vote, hadn't had kids yet, I didn't really pay much attention. Well, I did, they were only 3 years old at the time, but I didn't pay much attention to it. I mean, that's the reality, that, we gotta sort of be active, I think.
Well, at this point, too, I think there was a couple points came up tonight in discussion, the ed specs, that there are opportunities to think about this building, whatever it looks like, that can enhance the community as well as our curricular programs for the students. And so, for example, having a gym space that is something that is accessible to the community senior citizens. I mean, I think that's absolutely wonderful. And, I remember, going with my aunt and watching her run around the high school track field, and that was her gym. I mean, that was where, and she was long out of high school and stuff. But I think that also, it behooves us to think about places where these buildings can have multiple uses and serve multiple communities within within Newmarket. So, as we go through this, I think it's an important thing.
So Facilities Committee won't meet next week. I'm planning that we ought to meet the following week, and I'll get out a date. And we were meeting on Tuesdays, weren't we? At night, at about 6:30, if that works for everybody. Is that still good, or?
That's the week of vacation.
Yeah, that's the week of
7?
vacation.
Set a next date and a purpose, and we'll start to get back to the
Tuesdays
rhythm.
were bad for,
Or Wednesdays, it doesn't matter to me, I'm available pretty much any night, but I wanna keep the ball rolling, and just, obviously, I haven't made an agenda for that meeting, but one will be communications, because I think we need to do that yesterday.
Yep.
I mean, that's huge, and start really thinking about that. Anecdotally, this is funny, so many people have been coming up to me and saying they saw that video, people I don't even know, and they thought it was a helpful way of communicating information. I never thought it would be. I was surprised anybody watched it, but apparently a lot of people did. They got it on their phones or whatever, but, so that may be, just one minor part of everything, but one way to get information, hard information out. It's not a good way to get input, which is another consideration, obviously, but.
But to get it out, and then we
Because
can
nobody's gonna
talk
read,
about
nobody's gonna read, well, I shouldn't say
Right.
nobody, but very few people will read
That's the only thing.
this thing, and as important as it is, but that's not the way people get information these days.
I think we have several different vehicles at our disposal. We just have to come up with a plan to use them in the most effective way.
Thanks, everyone. Thought it was productive.
Thank you.